hope you don't feel slighted that I didn't wear a suit today.
No, you dressed up. You wore that cool hat.
Dude, thank you for the gift. We were talking about it on the elevator, but I want this studio to eventually become like a reflection of everyone that we've ever brought on.
That'd be
like
cool.
just like a series of like some memorabilia from past guests, some of their businesses, Dan O'Connor's wife. Like, I really don't care what
My
it
book?
is. Your book?
Yeah, you don't have my book up yet?
Are you an author?
No. I'm just
Oh,
Someday,
Pat Smith,
maybe.
The Art of War. He who shits last wins first. No, man, I appreciate you coming down. You, Steve Berger, Mike Rogers. When you talk to any of the local guys, anyone from St. Louis about, the quote unquote Mount Rushmore of like coaches, OGs, the guys that have really kind of pioneered local MMA, you three are on there without question. And unfortunately for me, this is actually the very first time I believe that we've gotten to sit down in any sort of long form and actually have a conversation. The very first time I actually met you, I don't know if you recall this, I did, was on The Ultimate Fighter when Andrew Sanchez had just beat Phil Hawes to get into the house.
Yes.
And we were in the
That's a crazy
the
story.
bus or something on the way back.
Yes,
because wasn't Phil like the #1 guy ranked on there?
Yes, that was a crazy story. That's a crazy story.
What was that like?
Oh, it's crazy.
Was Andrew nervous?
No, Andrew's never nervous.
Yeah.
Man, Andrew's he's a different breed. I don't know if I can say all that. Well, I'm going to tell you. We can edit stuff.
If we can,
I
we can always
snuck
edit
into
out.
his room. So they had it where you couldn't get it. You remember that with...
We snuck into Ashley's room.
Yeah. So we snuck in, and the guy knocks on the door, come in, hiding all that stuff, But he made a list. He goes, okay, the first day he comes back. Here's all the people that were there. So okay, we'll go through them, and so we figured it all out.
Because they didn't know who the opponent would be.
Right.
There was
So-
guys, but
right.
they had to fight to get in the house, but you didn't know who you could possibly be fighting.
Exactly. So we had to research all of them.
Yeah.
So he makes this list, and we start going through it, and we're like, went through all this stuff, and he's researching, I'm researching. Okay, it doesn't matter because all we need to know is we just don't want to face Phil Halls first. so well,
God
that
said,
old list
not.
went, And then that was so cool, though, you being there. That was awesome that you were there. Do you remember the buzz that was going on? I don't know if you were out there.
Beforehand?
Yeah, everybody's
Beforehand?
like, hey, man, Sanchez and Hawes, and I was in the middle of it, hearing it, and I was like, oh, wow, There was people who were whispering, that this fight was going to happen first.
When we found out, because we did something very similar. We were actually like strategically waiting in the lobby because if you recall, all the fighters went out there to do the original taping, and that's where they would find out who their opponent was. So we actually didn't do research on all the girls. What we decided was we're gonna wait in the lobby for however many hours were necessary because we knew when they were leaving, and we're like, they're not going to shoot for more than 4 hours. Spoiler warning, they shot for like 5 hours.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were waiting in the lobby, and all we needed was for Ashley to come in and just like whisper us a name. And that's exactly what she did. So we were just waiting there, waiting for people to come in. She came in, we gave her a hug, and she's like, that's the name. And I was like, okay, cool. And then we all went back and did our thing. But she also said, Andrew's got the toughest fight. And I go, what does that mean? So then we went to like, we got the list of guys, and we're like, we're just going down the list of like, who is the toughest fight? And we're like, is he fighting Phil Hawes? I was like, that by the numbers, John Jones's training partner, that's got to be the toughest guy. Lo and behold, that was it. When you found out that it was him, what were your thoughts? Fuck.
Yeah, it was just, well, no, it was more of like, man, we put all this time into all this other stuff, but I wasn't worried, honestly.
No, not worried, but more
I mean,
like
he was at the time.
first fight being him.
But
just
it
to get
was
in the
huge.
house.
But Sanchez is a different character. I can't explain it. When I'm with Sanchez, I never. But you got to remember too, I was never full time with Sanchez. Sanchez was with Murat Keshtov at the time, and I had the utmost confidence in Murat. Love Murat.
He wasn't full time with you at the beginning?
Never.
No shit.
Sanchez was always in and out.
cross training.
Yeah, he was. I was always like a home base for him. Me and Sanchez just connected. I had his first amateur fight on Cage Championships. I had his first pro fight on Cage Championships. He was always in and out, but he always felt comfortable here, and I always felt comfortable with Sanchez. We related good. We talked good. We talk all the time. It has been. I talked to him last week, but it's usually we talk a lot more. But since he's been married, got a kid, he's out in Colorado. He's going to be a firefighter. He's got a lot going on in his life.
God bless.
So, yeah, I need to go out and see him. Love that guy. I mean, me and Sanchez it's just a different breed, man. That guy, I'd go anywhere with that guy. You know.
I would agree with you when you were talking about the buzz beforehand. It was something that
It was weird. Yeah.
I only ever experienced on The Ultimate Fighter, and I realize now, hindsight being 2020, it's because everyone was on edge.
Yeah.
You know,
it
you
was
get
crazy.
the call to be on The Ultimate Fighter, but not really. You got to have a fight before you're actually in.
Sure.
And, roll the dice. Like, you could have easily said Phil Hawes should deserve to be in that house as well, right? Because he ended up being in the UFC even though he lost.
Absolutely. And think about where Phil Hawes could have been if he had won that fight.
Yeah.
I think that's what derailed his. I mean, he was like the Pico, which we can get into that story too. Everybody had this. Oh, Phil Hawes was untouchable. He was the golden child, and
Trained up by John Jones.
I think Dana White felt that way too. He thought, okay, let's just get rid of this wrestler. Let's get rid of this Sanchez guy. We'll put him with Hawes. I personally believe that was designed.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you.
It was designed. Let's just get that one out of the way, and now he's in the house. Nobody's going to give him any trouble. It's a easy day.
It was regarded that they were 1 and 2.
Sure.
And they were basically arguing about who was 1 or who was 2, but that was like the two guys. So for them to have to fight just to get on the show, I think you might be onto something. It struck me as odd as well.
It's just my I don't have any facts to back that up.
But even then, I mean, think about it like in the terms of like the history, right? Like Khalil Roundtree was on that show as well. And then Andrew Sanchez versus Khalil for the championship to get the contract. Lo and behold, skip, 7 years, 8 years later, Khalil's fighting for the light heavyweight title against Alex Pereira. I mean, Andrew Sanchez is a real motherfucker. He's fought some top tier fighters
guys
and
that fought
beat
for
them.
the belt. Anthony Smith. I mean, but you look at that Khalil fight, another setup. Sorry, I'm here to spoil everything.
Yeah,
that was another setup. Khalil was out, brought back in. They thought Khalil would be the guy to be Sanchez. I just think Sanchez, this is my personal opinion, just speaking out loud, probably going to get me in trouble, but Sanchez was set up to lose. They wanted him out of there.
because of his style?
Yeah, I think his style didn't. They wanted him out of there. And Khalil was the next golden child. I mean, so that all of a sudden he was dead, and then he was resurrected. Remember in the show he got beat, he's out, and now he's back, and then all of a sudden they're fighting.
Didn't someone get hurt? I
yeah.
think?
So,
they got back as an
here he's
alternate.
back again. It's like and tough guy. I mean, I love Khalil Roundtree.
Yeah,
great guy.
Just wanted to take a second to pause the action and just tell you guys thank you so much for consuming our content. Easy Talk is a passion project. This podcast is just a bunch of like-minded people coming together to produce some cool stuff and talk to some cool people. One of the things I would very much appreciate is if you could possibly like the video or subscribe to the channel, just because it helps us in the algorithm and ultimately to grow, to get more exposure to everybody, including ourselves, and ultimately just make a better product. Take a second. I'd greatly appreciate it. And on with the show.
But I mean, great guy.
But you think he was the favorite? He was the favored.
For sure. Which
is interesting, but let me.
I don't know if he was the favorite. I mean, I think those of us that knew MMA knew that he's not the favorite. He's got knockout power now.
Favored.
Yeah.
Meaning like they hope they win.
Yeah. They wanted him to win, but I mean, I think Sanchez had more tools going into that would beat him. But I mean, gosh, he hits hard. I remember him inside
Khalil
control.
Or Andrew?
Khalil hits hard.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. When he was hitting him with hammer fist from the side, I was, this far from it. I was like, holy. He was generating power from this far. I was like, yeesh.
Did you watch his fight to get into the house?
What do you mean?
He won it. Khalil won the fight to get into the house.
I probably did. I just can't remember.
He stood up and soccer kicked the guy in the abdomen.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in the crowd because we were waiting.
Yes,
and it sounded like thunder striking land. It was like, wow! And the guy didn't get up. And I was like, yeah, no fucking wonder. You hit me with that, I'm going to sue you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He hit hard. I asked Andrew about that. I was like, holy cow. I mean, he had a single in. He had his head down. He was just getting cracked side. I'm like, what was the mic? He's like, I don't even remember. I was like, man, you were heavy. Because, I mean, He was hitting hard. He could generate power in such a small area.
Can I ask what it's like? And listen, I know that there's a chronological to this conversation.
Yeah,
but
we're
fuck
all
that.
out of sorts already.
I just
so-
want to ask the questions that come up when I feel them. And number
All right.
one is, you are surrounded by these alpha male figures like Jake Collier, Andrew Sanchez, Dakota Bush, and the slew of fighters that you have also trained. What is it like to try to get these kinds of people to A, respect you enough to listen to you, and then B, also like have them understand that you care about them? Like, hey, you're not just a fighter to me. Like, you're one of my guys. What is that interpersonal relationship like? Because you're dealing with like the 1% of 1% of 1% of people that will ever make it to the UFC, and you were blessed to have multiple of them, right? I just, I don't think people realize the caliber of men that's required to be in such elite form of unarmed combat. And I want to know what the kind of men that shaped these men are like. And that's why I have you on here. You're so interesting to me because of that. What is it like having to lead these alpha males?
Oh, you actually answered it earlier in your statement. You said that you care about these guys, man. At the end of the day, I care about these guys. I've always, you're looking out for them. I want them to do well, which is also a curse. And that's also got me in a lot of trouble because sometimes you want it more than they want it. When you're dealing with Jake, the early Jake and Dakota, and I never had to worry about that because they wanted it as bad as I did. What happens is time goes on and sometimes you don't want it as bad, as a fighter.
Yeah.
Because you've experienced the glory. And so sometimes that's where it gets tough. But for me, I'm like the father figure. So they're like my kids, Jake and Dakota. Those are like my kids. I love those guys. So I always wanted it more than them sometimes. And you can't do that because you just can't. But that's the key, is caring. I mean, you got to really care for these guys. You really got to mean it. You can't fake it, or they're going to see right through that.
So then how do you balance that? How do you balance caring enough to get their respect, but not so much that you're dragging someone across a finish line they don't want to cross?
Well, first off is I'm in a unique situation, very unique situation. So it's not even comparable to guys like Mike. Mike Rogers got a big gym, so many guys in UFC. We're not even in the same hemisphere. We're two different hemispheres. This guy's he's built something from the bottom up, like me, but in the sense that he's had more of it. This is not my business. I am not in the MMA business. I do not. I don't even like saying I have a gym, but it's for fun. It's a hobby. I've never wanted it a business. You know what I mean? Because
Wow.
for since like my dad, he makes fishing lures, and I started a business back in '89 called Ozarks Eds from him, because he sent his lures to Bass Pro and they knocked him off, and he got mad, so he turned the lip around, sent to Cabela's, and won Cabela's in '95, and he's in '96 Tackle Craft. And I said, Dad, whoa, we got something here. I was always business minded. I said, let's just get this business going. And I started in '89 in California. And he's like, no, son, I don't want to do that. And I was like, oh, why not? He's like, because I don't want a business. He says, it's my hobby. If I start getting paid for it, it becomes a business. I don't want that. And
He was doing it as a product of
yes,
passion.
and so then I realized that was a huge, huge thing for me. I realized, man, if I get paid for it, now I work for you, And so I don't want to work for these guys. You know what I mean? I want to do it because I enjoy it. So I did it from a passion. So that's the difference. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is when you run a business, you have to worry about the kids' class, this class, that class, this. I don't have to worry about that. I have the advantage. I actually have the advantage over these guys. Because,
but then isn't that like a financial loss to you?
Sure.
I mean, you're putting forth all the.
and it's not much. I mean, we're working out a 10 by 14 shed, But
Yeah.
I pride myself in that. And
do
we'd be
some
working
killers
out
of that shed.
We'd be working out of a phone booth if I could find one. I've been searching for a phone booth, the old school phone booths. But anyway, that's another story. But yeah, if I could find a phone booth, we'd fight out of a phone booth.
Can I ask how you even got inundated in martial arts? One of the things that fascinates me about the generation that came before me was, you know, when I was coming up in MMA, WEC was kind of picking up, the UFC was kind of picking up. I don't want to say it was quote unquote mainstream, but it was on that trajectory. But there's a generation before me that was like I would consider like the Josh Sampos, the Lance Benoist, where they were already like in the thick of it, in that trajectory. And then there's a generation before them. And that's where I put like Steve Berger, you, Mike Rogers, where Heath Pedigo, where, I mean, for you guys to be inundated in this world, you had to actively pursue it. It's not like it was on TV for you or anything.
No.
What was it about martial arts or mixed martial arts that even got your interest? Because it was not
Man,
sexy
that's a
when you
tough one.
started.
You know, I probably have to narrow this thing down to I was always an athlete. I was always athletic. I played every sport from golf to we didn't have football. We didn't have wrestling. I grew up in a town of less than 3,000 at the time. So we didn't have all the cool sports. But I played everything from badminton to croquet to, you know, you name it, a sport. I played them all, and I was mediocre at all of them. As soon as I understood the game, I went to the next game. You know, as soon as I understood baseball, I went to basketball. And as soon as I got in basketball and I figured it out, I moved on. Could I have been good at any of those sports? Probably. I really believe I could have. I was athletic, but I just never could stick with one thing. You know what I mean? As soon as I knew how to do it, I got bored with it. I had to go to something else. I had to figure it out. I had to go to something else. You know, and I loved boxing. You know, my brother forced me to box when I was a kid. He's 4 years older than me. So our thing was when Mom and Dad would leave, he took a sheet, big square sheet, and he threw it out in the bedroom. And we put remember the mittens with just the thumb on them? And we'd get the mittens on, and he'd shove toilet paper. We'd take toilet paper and roll it up, shove it in our mouth, you know, and we'd come
Let's
out.
go, boys.
He's 4 years older than me.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, man, we probably started when I was walking, you know. So,
No.
I mean, it wasn't. I mean, we fought all. Me and
Yeah,
my
but the
brother,
difference between like an 11-year-old and a 15-year-old is like.
We fought all the time. I mean, he's got more scars than I do. Mine are all hidden in my hairline, thank goodness, from trash can lids. But I got him with hot dog forks, rocks. I mean, he's all scarred up, leg. I threw him on his motorcycle. But anyway.
But you love each other.
I love each other.
Love each other.
Me and my brother are so close now. But he
God
would put
bless.
them gloves on, and he would just piece me up, and he'd call me Billy the Kid. He'd drop me, boom, and I'd come down, you know, and he'd be like, "You're Billy the Kid." Yeah, I'm Billy the Kid, you know, and I'd get up, come back for more, and he'd just beat the snot out of me. So I think he was fast. He was extremely fast. He had a good fast twitch muscle, and I had that. I had good fast twitch. And so then I thought, man, this is cool. So as I got older, I never got in a lot of fights in school. I had a few, you know, but I never had any issues because I was fast, you know. And then I was always into martial arts, always had the black belt magazines and all that, you know, growing up. And then in '88, I went in the Navy.
How old were you when you went into the Navy?
18.
Oh, so right out of high
Yeah,
school.
I was born in '70, so.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. But I loved it. And so I was always enamored with martial arts. Just growing up in Cuba, there's nothing. There's nothing in Cuba. There was
Cuba,
nothing,
Missouri,
yeah,
not the country.
Yeah, well, which I ended up in Cuba. That's where I met my wife, but another story.
Oh, holla.
So anyway, so yeah, so
said,
I'm
"Hey,
telling you,
baby,
I'm a rabbit chaser. Hang
You
on.
want to see some capitalism?
Yeah, so, which is another story. So anyway, so I was just enamored with it, and then I tried different martial arts when I was in California. I lived in California in Treasure Island, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with California. It's in between Oakland and San Francisco. I got there on October 15th, 1992, 2 days before the earthquake. And then the earthquake happened 2 days. I was on Treasure Island. I don't know if you remember the Bay Bridge and the Cypress structure. I just got off the Cypress structure.
You can't say I remember. I've watched videos.
Yes, you watched video.
What
Well,
year
the
was this?
Cypress started. It would have been 90. Was the World Series between San Francisco and Alameda, so that would have been 90.
What, 94? 93?
No, 1990. I'm sorry, or 1990. 1989. Sorry, I got her now.
I'm a 92 baby.
Okay,
I was
well,
a
3
twinkle.
years before you
I
were
was
born.
a twinkle in my father's eye.
This is really cool though, because San Francisco was playing Oakland for the World Series, and it's a Bay. I mean, Oakland's here, the Bay, San Francisco. The World Series is between two cities,
guys
right?
in the same
Which
state.
saved thousands of lives, because at 5:06 when the earthquake happened, nobody was on Interstate 80 as much, and they used to call it the largest parking lot in the world because Interstate 80 was just packed at that time. Well, I was over at Alameda getting my boots for my uniform. I get home, I sit down, relax. My buddy goes, knock it off. He had headphones on. He said, knock it off. I said, what are you talking about? He's like, knock it off. He's from California. This guy's idiot. I set my beer on my table, next thing I know, a beer falls in my lap. I'm like, whoa. And then I see his eyes get big. He jumps up. He's like, the door. And I still don't know what's going on. And stuff started coming in. The earthquake happened.
That was what, like a magnitude 8, right? Or
7.2, I believe, which is huge for that area.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was crazy. So, but anyway, to get off that, I was in Treasure Island at the time. Nothing there that I knew where to find martial arts. There's a couple little studios I went to. I tried this karate place, didn't work out. Had buddies, we were always messing around, grappling. We had no clue what we were doing, And then I went to the East Coast. Then I'm in Little Creek, Virginia. And then guys like Paul Vonick, I don't know if you're familiar with that. Paul Vonick shows up, and this guy was like, oh my gosh, because
who is Paul Vonick, if you don't mind me asking?
He's just an old martial art. Honestly, I don't know what his style was. I mean, I've always done that back fist. That was Paul Vonick, man. He was one of them guys just pow, 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 and he'd hit you so fast. You're like, whoa, gosh, where'd that come from? This guy was crazy, and I still use that. I still like that back fist that he's got. But anyway,
Jay D'Amato used to teach me some of that stuff.
Yeah, it's all that crazy stuff, Dim Mak, all that. And then there was like George Dillman with closed circle jiu-jitsu and Gene LaBelle and guys like that, And I've tried learning all I could, but it was like one picture at a time, I got a few face-to-face when I went there, but every time I'd go to a studio, I'd be like, it's kind of hokey,
Yeah.
I always knew MMA for some reason. I just didn't know it to its extent.
When you say kind of hokey, do you mean what do you mean, like culty, or did you not believe in the martial art?
Didn't believe in it. I didn't believe it was the full package. I'm not saying it was wrong. Even back then, I knew that there's something just missing. I just knew it. And then in 1993, I was in Virginia Beach. I think it was Sharky's. I'm not sure the name of the bar. I was in the bar, and they had UFC 1 on. And I'm watching, I'm like, what the heck? And I had a buddy who was drinking. We're like, hey, check this out, man. He's like, what the heck is that? I'm like, I don't know, but I like it. And I was like, this is it. It was
like real
what are you
fighting.
talking about? He was like, what are you talking about? I was like, this is it. And then it was over. And like I said, then I was just scouring. I need to find this, because I was in jiu-jitsu, but it was American jiu-jitsu. And they had like kimonos and stuff, and I'm like, this. And then
weird.
after class, we would roll, me and the black belts and stuff, and I would beat them. And I don't know anything, so I knew, okay, I don't know anything. I'm not saying necessarily beat him at the time. I can't remember. I just knew I dominated him. I don't know if I was submitted.
If an entry-level person walked into a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym today and rolled with any black belt,
exactly,
they're not having that story.
Exactly.
They're not surviving 2 or 3 minutes.
And I didn't know that at the time. I just knew this ain't right.
Yeah.
This ain't right.
You can feel it. The proof is in the pudding.
These guys ain't right. So then I had the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu tapes in 94, maybe 95.
When you say you had them,
I still got them.
But when you say you had them, like, you had to actively get them?
Yeah.
It's not like
Black Belt Magazine.
Yeah.
I ordered them, and they're the VHS tapes. It's called the Gracie Basics.
Jesus.
So then you had the Gracie Basics, which was a 7-tape set. I still have it. I've shown them to you. Something that's cool as hell. And then after that, a couple years later, they did Advanced, but I didn't care about it. So we'd watch some tapes, me and my buddy. I had a buddy named Lane. I call him my Cato. He wrestled at a junior
Is that
college.
like
you ever seen Pink Panther?
The driver, the Asian driver?
No, there's actually a Cato too from Pink Panther.
Oh.
And the old Pink Panther, Peter
Okay.
Sellers, and this guy he'd come home and he'd keep him. He always had Cato around to keep him on edge, and he'd jump out of the closet, and they'd get in a fight, I had one of those. Oh, I literally did. His name was Lane, and Lane was like I said, a junior collar wrestler, and so I'd watch these tapes. And I'd train. I'd work on these moves. I'd watch from tapes, and I'd sub him. Oh, it'd make him so mad. He's a wrestler. He's bigger than me, stronger than me. He's like, this ain't right. It'd make him so mad. So then, my wife, who's my wife today, she knew too. We'd be up in bed, and we had his townhouse, and you hear Lane come home at night, and he'd been drinking, so he's going to test his oats. And it would be 2 in the morning. You hear him come upstairs, and I'd lay in bed like, okay, here we go. Door would open. Here come Lane. We're in the closet.
Is your wife sleeping next to you?
My wife's just like, oh my gosh. It's,
the only woman who's used to her husband rolling with another man in bed.
Right. Well, she used to film us. I got some old VHS.
Brother, taken out of context, me and my buddy Lang in the bed, my wife used to film us.
We'd be in a
special man, Pat. How progressive of you.
But we'd be in the closet. He'd stuff me down in the closet. And he always dominated me out of the back because he was so much stronger and bigger than me. And I'd sub him. And, he'd get mad. He'd tear out, and I'd go back to bed. I mean, this went on. So my wife knew what she was getting into. And like I said, she would film it. I've got some old VHS because then me and him would go out in the backyard, and we'd scrap, Not always punches, we would just basically grapple there.
Roughhouse.
Yeah. And then
Is
just
he
started
still alive?
I don't know. I haven't heard from that guy. I've been trying to get a hold of him for a while. So I moved, and then trying to keep the chronological order here.
You were in California a couple years?
No, I went from California to Virginia. And then after Lane, I had a bunch of guys there. Oh, we started a little UFC at my work.
What do you mean? We started a little UFC at my work?
Yeah. So this is where I got to be careful. No, I don't. Screw it.
Like 20 years ago.
Yeah. So we, in the military, we had our guys, and we would my chief was involved, who's still a good friend of mine, and he knows who it is if he's watching this. And we would have little UFCs.
Unsanctioned, sanctioned fights.
In the military, because I loved it.
Did you guys have gloves or no?
Yeah, sometimes. We wrote to it. Yeah, it depends where we're at. I mean,
sometimes.
We might be on an op in Maryland, and it could start up there. we might have been in, Puerto
How'd you
Rico.
word it to the other guys? Hey, boys, let's see who the biggest badass is.
Yeah.
Everyone says, hold my beer.
And my chief, the one chief I had, I call him Lightning Foot, Edney. He was a kicker. He was a Taekwondo guy. Gosh, he could kick. And so me and him would always scrap. We had battles in Cuba, the country. We had battles in all over the place. Maryland, we had some really good ones. We cleared out a bar one time playing pool together, and it was a mess.
What do you mean you cleared out a bar? What does that
mean?
Man,
me and him.
You guys were fighting?
Yeah, we didn't fight anybody else. We were fighting each other.
Oh, my God.
And my brother, which is funny, as he lived in Cuba, the country Cuba, and I don't remember the Haitian ordeal that went down. A Haitian ferry flipped over, and I got called to Cuba. So I go to Cuba, and my brother lives there. So me and this chief, and we get in a fight out there with nunchucks in the chief's hall. We're fighting with nunchucks. They were the
Did you just carry nunchucks?
Yes, we did. So they were the rubber ones. But let me tell you, those rubber ones hurt. They still hurt.
Yeah,
it's actually
I bet they fucking do.
It's actually worse because you can get hit like 50 times with them.
Because they're lighter.
Yeah. Once
that is the first time in my adult life I've ever heard someone say, "So I got my fucking nunchucks out."
But we had to make it adventurous. We got thrown out. They called Shore Patrol. They cleaned us out of the chief's mess, he was a chief, so we're fighting in his billiard area. They throw us out of there. We scramble that out to outside, and we just end up in places where they have signs that say "stay off" because of the mines. Because there's a lot of old mines in Cuba, and you had to say. And they had old bunkers. Me and him end up in a bunker.
Vietnam, they still have that to this day.
Oh, yeah, there's still mines in Cuba. Matter of fact, a lot of them would go off. I don't know if you've watched A Few Good Men, but there's a chasm in between our gate and their gate, the Cuban gate, and we're both looking at each other all the time. Well, deer and stuff all the time hit mines. And the Marines would call me over, "Hey, we're having deer meat tonight," because they had another one hit a mine, so we'd go over there for deer meat.
God bless. Deer's cool. Doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, so it was cool. So anyway, we spill out into this thing, and we get in this fight, and he's been drinking, and he gets drunk, and he wanders off, and I lose him. So I'm looking for him, and I'm getting a little concerned because, we're out in the middle of the mines, I'm like, man, I'm getting on the main road here. He ended up falling in between the pier and a boat and getting his leg smashed by a boat. Oh, it was a mess. But anyway, that's me and him would fight all the time. And then another guy named Muggleberg would fight all the time. Big, tall Englishman. He's like 6'4". Hands on him. And that's how we met. We met at a party on a second floor, and we got in a fight, and he tackles me over the railing, and I hook him up in a guillotine, and he's like, let go. I'm like, I let go. I'm falling 2 stories. Set me back, and we can work this out.
Pull me back.
I'm negotiating. He's like, no. And then we end up going downstairs. We agree to go downstairs and finish this deal. We go downstairs.
What a gentleman's agreement.
Yeah, it was cool. We go down, and the best shot I ever got on him was I shot a double on him, and he slams me, and my head breaks his ribs. So that was my best shot. And Shore Patrol pull up, break us up. Me and him became best buddies. And then,
see, this is how I know, like, I'm just a soft bitch. Because, like, you're telling me these stories about, like, you and your boys, and Steve Berger had a similar story about him fighting Mike Rogers. And I think to myself, like, I would never fight any of my friends.
well, it's a different era,
That's what I'm saying.
Most in that era, you became great friends because you've been to battle with them, And
duly noted. And some of my best friends now are the guys that I sparred with and everything like that. But, like, if we're going to a bar, if we're going to patios, I'm not thinking, hey, Chris, I bet I beat your ass.
But that's it. But you got to remember, back then it was new. It's a totally different.
Everyone
era.
just wanted to try it all the time.
Exactly. I mean, it's people don't understand that.
And you guys didn't have gyms,
right?
So you didn't have like constant training.
I was in a military with people that wanted to be there too. You got to remember that. There's a difference. There is a big difference. We're begging to get the call. Call us. Call us. Call us. Call us.
You want to go to
Something's
combat?
happening. Call us. We've been training for this. It's the same thing with martial arts. You all right, I've learned how to do this. Man, I got to try. That's my buddy, man. We've been trying, I can't do it with him. You know what I mean? So we would go to the bar and
find somebody to practice
and I would
on.
tell him that. One of my favorite fights was I fought this tall guy. He was a great guy. He had a little Indian in him, and he long, lean, but he had that long muscle. You know what I mean? I can't
Still
describe
strong.
it.
He might not have been bulky, but you got a hold of him, and you're
and
like,
I had a
holy
little
shit.
courage in me. I don't know if I'd have done this without a little courage. I really don't.
You say
But
a little
he had,
courage,
he had
you mean a
this
little
necklace. Yeah.
And
And he had his shirt unbuttoned, He was that guy, and he had this necklace, big necklace. I remember looking up to him going, I've been watching these tapes now. I should be good. I remember playing with this guy's neck. Come on outside. My buddy was like, don't do it, don't do it. The other buddy, his buddy, they were Marines. I was Navy, but I'm good friends with him. He's like, don't do it. Well, he ended up leaving. So I got to talk this guy into doing it. I said, I won't throw a punch, I promise. That was a bad idea. So we get out there and we square off, and I'm just slapping him. Pop, 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 just tearing him up, thinking I'm getting cocky, and he just gets mad. Boom, drills me.
Sticks you.
I land on my back. I remember being delirious, and I remember my buddies trying to jump in, and my one buddy stopping him, saying, no, he wants a fair fight, which I remember yeah, I do, but if I do get in real trouble, jump in. But
I do, but I don't. But I do. But if it goes bad, I don't.
So we're going, and I remember blocking good, and he was just hitting me everywhere. He split that scar. I don't know if you see. I got a big one there. Just split. I remember blood run down. I remember I'm doing good, and then I hear him breathe, and I'm like, maybe this will work.
Oh, he's getting tired.
Oh, he's getting tired. But I remember just getting the crap beat. I remember my buddy a couple times saying, "We got to stop this. We got to stop this. We got to stop this." And I remember, no, I can do this. I remember rolling. We get out. I somehow get a butterfly. I had no clue what that was at the time. And I flip him with a butterfly sweep, purely accidental. He turns to me. I remember I get a guillotine on, and we're north-south, and we land, right? Boom. And I'm like, got him now. It's all over. And I hear him do the old, and you could feel it. And he starts standing up. And I've got his head. Head controls direction. This is defying everything I know about gravity.
What is physics?
Physics. And he's getting up, and I'm like, I'm dead. If this guy gets, I'm done because I am spent too.
Are you worried about him like slamming you?
I'm just worried about him getting up, period, because I'm exhausted.
I got you.
I'm bloody. I can't see. I got blood in my eyes. I'm
You're literally holding on
I'm
for dear life.
literally, this is it. And I remember hearing a sound of a chain link fence at my feet. I'm
Sort of walking up the fence.
Chain link fence, and put enough pressure to get him finally, which still took effort. He collapses, boom, face down. He just face down.
Oh, he went out.
And he's like, I'm done. No, he didn't go out.
Exhaustion.
He just, and I let go. When we hit, and we get up, and I turn around the fence, and all I see is badges. Well, at the time, it was the fire department, but it's dark. We've been fighting, and all we see is turn around, and all these guys are lined up with badges. Well, he freaks out and takes off running. I wanted to go have beer with him.
Hey, boys.
I turned around. That kind of freaked me out. And then I realized, it's a fire department. They're just standing
They're
there
not going to
watching.
arrest me. What are you going to do? There's no fire
So we
here.
ended up going to the bar. Well, we tried to go in. The guy's like, you're not coming in like that. So they had to
because
go
you were-
wash me off and
yeah.
clean me up. And I always wanted to find that guy. I never did find that guy again. But my buddy said he came to their house and they had to clean rocks out of his knuckles.
Because he
They
was
were picking,
missing you?
Yeah, I was in guard, or he was in my guard, and I remember he would bam, bam, and it was pavement, with gravel, so they had to pick the guy. And so I never landed a punch on this guy. I smacked him a lot, but because I promised him I wouldn't throw a punch. Am I glad I did that now? Yes, but would I ever do that again? No.
Well, yeah, you're older now,
Stupid,
brother.
stupid.
Wiser.
But so then that was kind of when I was like, this is real. And this stuff works.
Meaning taking away from theory, starting to apply it, albeit in an impromptu
Right.
way. But you also didn't have...
I didn't have a coach. I didn't have,
Yeah,
you
you didn't
I'm
have the
watching
resources that we did.
VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And they're working. I'm like, this is real.
Was it like a euphoric feeling? When
Absolutely.
You're like, holy shit, this is the truth.
Absolutely.
This is the answer.
I mean, literally, I think some daylight came down, and I think I heard, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, wow, this is real.
Did you ever think, because I know you're still in the military at this time, but did you ever start thinking like, I want to fight, I want to...
That is a
Because
very
the UFC,
good question.
you see UFC 1, so you know that if you wanted to test yourself, there's a platform in which to do it, but did it ever cross your mind? Did you ever think, I'm going to take that leap?
People always talk. We've been around it. You've been in the fight game, so you know exactly what I'm talking. Well, if I'd have done it, man. I had back issues. Or we've all heard the stories.
Yeah, shut the
right?
fuck up.
Right. So you know the stories I'm going. And so I have to be honest with myself. I always believe that you are where you want to be in life. I'm 100%. I still believe that. You are where you are. Yeah, I don't want to be poor. Yeah, you do, or you would do something about it. You are where you are in life because you want to be there. So for me to say I would have been a fighter, then why wasn't I? You know what I mean? Look at Steve Berger. He drove out to North Carolina, watched the fight, and he became a fighter.
Yeah.
I did not. I think I wanted to be a fighter, but I'm like, why didn't I? That's a great question. I tumble with that all the time. I obviously did not want to be.
Even Mike Rogers, when I talked to him, because he went with Steve kind of dragged him out there.
Yeah.
And when they got
That's
back,
a great story.
Mike was like, yeah, cool,
Yeah.
Like, it was cool, but, like, he wanted to finish wrestling. Steve was like, oh, no,
This is it.
this is the life for me.
I know, and I wrangle with that. Believe me, even to this day, I wrangle with that.
I want to be careful how I ask this. It's not
Ask
like a
whatever you want.
regret, not a regret, but when you say that you wrangle with it, do you mean like you wish you would have?
No.
You ponder it? Like, what do you mean you wrangle with
I
it?
wrangle with the answer. I'm built different. What is for me. I don't sit there and worry about this and that. I do. I'm human. I worry about things, but I'm more worried about the answer. You know what I mean? I don't know why I didn't. I don't have an answer. That's what I wrangle with. I don't
Gotcha.
wrangle with. I wrangle with, why didn't I? Because I loved it. It fit me. I was never good at anything. Think about it. You got a person that's athletic and they play all these different sports. They're built for MMA because that's what MMA is.
Explosive, technical, all these other things.
Yeah, but
you also have a mind for athletics.
Yes, but MMA is a combination of all
everything.
these different arts, just like sports are.
It is the art of mixing the martial arts.
And which I've always said is this sport, what makes it great is its detriment. So what makes mixed martial arts great is it's mixed. It's not a discipline. But its downfall, in my opinion, is it's not a discipline. There's no discipline. So when you run into Lyoto Machidas, you run into Wonder Boy, they're disciplined, good dudes. They're not saying MMA guys aren't. There's a lot of great MMA guys. But you know what I'm saying? They had a discipline. So they're disciplined in an art. But it doesn't play in an MMA world. But at the same time, I say its greatest thing makes it not disciplined.
Detriment?
But its biggest detriment, in my opinion, is it's not disciplined. So the very thing that makes it great is the very thing to me that makes it weak.
Why do you think that it doesn't have discipline, out of curiosity? You don't think that mixed martial artists don't have the same discipline as martial artists? Is this like
Absolutely
a time
not.
thing?
I think so. I think I think so. I think we're getting more discipline. You have to be. It's a different game. But back then, you could have been just a tough guy and do rather well. And then you went through the era of you could just be a good wrestler and do rather well. We're in a whole new era.
Good luck now, brother.
Well, they're nerds now.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, they're smart. And which comes to play to the original thing that I believe is fighting is 90% mental. Of course it is. It's 90% mental if you've already have the tools.
By tools, you mean the physical capabilities?
Yeah. Not always physical, but necessarily technical and the understanding of the game. If you have the understanding of the game now is how you apply it. The game now is understanding where the windows are. Is that window open? Is this one open? This one's not open. I got to pick the lock on this window. I might have to bust this window down. You know, these guys are thinkers. They're not just athletes.
No,
that game's so you have to know when to apply and where.
You're talking about if I may, you're talking about the progression of the talent and the trajectory of mixed martial arts, meaning that when you first started, you were putting together information from VHS tapes, applying them quite literally in everyday life. But since then, and I would all agree with you, like there was no discipline in that because mixed martial arts wasn't even called mixed martial arts; it was called no holds bar fighting, right? And it was more like and if, by the way, if you don't agree with anything I'm saying, by the way, you don't have to. Don't feed my ego.
No.
But back then it was more which martial art was the best.
Exactly.
Even when the first UFC was kind of birthed, the thought process of mixing the martial arts wasn't really cognitively aware there. It was more like take the boxer, take the wrestler, take the sumo guy, take the jiu-jitsu guy, take the karate guy, the taekwondo guy. See which martial art's the best. But it wasn't like wait a second, guys. Like, we can take from all of these and develop, like, true combat, true unarmed, efficient combat. And you're saying that at the start, that was MMA's detriment, that they didn't have the discipline that these other martial arts did.
I think it's still a detriment, to be honest.
No
with
shit.
You. Yeah, at the lower level. At the lower level, like
Elaborate.
local, like amateur MMA, you get a lot of that same scenario. You know what I mean?
Even though it's more commercial and now you
but
have more MMA gyms than you do other gyms?
You still have so many people behind. You know what I mean?
When you say behind, what do you mean? Like technically?
That too, but just mentality. They still have there's a lot of people that still, I don't know, you see it, you know what I'm talking about. It's
not
like
real fighters.
Bullfrog of the pond. You know what I mean? You always got the ones that just want to rule that pond and that's it. And they do it for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean? So they just want to stay in their pond and be the big frog. Well, their pond's this big. You know what I mean? I've always wanted my guys to get in the bigger pond. Just jump in a bigger pond. We'll figure it out. Jump in a bigger pond. Okay, you pretty much owning this pond. Let's go to another one. You know, so that's a lack of discipline. Is the point I'm making is the discipline is not. So many guys come out without the discipline. And if you get in the wrong gym that doesn't have the discipline, and I failed in them areas too. I'm not sitting there saying I have. Where I should have been a little more disciplined on these guys, and they come and go. But you are where you want to be. So
can I present to you an alternative viewpoint?
Sure.
What if their goal was never to jump that pond? But I don't disagree with what you're saying, because I think you can go into any gym, like literally any gym, from St. Charles and May, Wolves Den, what have you,
Right.
and you can pick out the guy who's like the amateur that never went pro, or the pro that never like really took any tough fights. You know what I mean? I'm sure those exist, but I mean, the I don't know if I would make the point or the argument that they have always existed and they will always exist.
I agree 100%. 100%.
But I don't know if that's isolated to mixed martial arts. You don't think that exists in other martial arts?
You bet it does.
But you think it's you think it's a detriment to MMA?
I think it's a detriment because of the discipline factor that you're taught in wrestling. You're taught in Taekwondo. You're taught in...
Damn.
You know what I'm saying?
You're not wrong.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Where it's a discipline. And so those guys, it's just hard to explain, but those guys, when I come in a gym, I'm always looking for a guy with effort. Who's going to put the effort in? And not just effort. Anybody can... Some people are just not smart enough to realize, I just got to work hard, and they work hard for no reason.
Smashing your face on a brick wall is not smart.
Right.
It's just hard.
So there's effort, but they're listening to you. But you know, most people now, when you're talking to them, they're not listening to you. Not that I'm all knowing, but if you're going to put your faith in me, you better listen to me, because if you listen to me and I steer you wrong, it's my fault. You need to go somewhere. But you don't listen to me and you're wrong, it's your fault. So, I mean, anytime you look to somebody, you call upon them, then you better listen to them. You know, if I call a plumber in, I'm not going to tell him how to do the job when he gets there. I'm going to submit to him. Hey,
what am I paying you for, brother?
Yeah, hey, I'm out of my league. That's why I'm calling you. You call me, I bring in, then you better listen to me. If you don't, I'm not saying I'm all knowing, but you got to believe in what you're doing. Confidence is half the battle in this thing.
When you brought up the sport of wrestling, it immediately clicked what you're trying to say. Do you mind if I try to articulate that thought?
Man, have at it, because I'm not a wrestler. So
no,
I would love to hear it.
Wrestling, for me, the reason I coach wrestling and not MMA now is because wrestling made me. Without wrestling, I would have never been a fighter.
Okay.
And fighting was, I'm glad I did it, but it was not what made me. Wrestling was. And wrestling took a 14-year-old Arion with zero discipline. You know, I thought I was tougher than I was. I had small man syndrome, all these other things. And the very first day I realized I'm going to be the nail much more than I'm the hammer. It taught me, oh shit, that there are some really bad motherfuckers out there, and they can hurt me if I let them. But it also taught me that everyone started where I started.
Yeah.
This guy that's beating my ass, at some point in time, he also didn't know what he was doing. So if he became an animal, I can also become an animal. But these were things that I all learned in the sport of wrestling. And that when I transitioned to MMA, I learned a lot of things like technique, armbar, you know, the transitions between dirty boxing and boxing, clinch, going from, you know, level changes to a takedown, showing certain things. I learned a lot of things that helped me be dangerous in unarmed combat, but I did not learn the mental, the lifestyle things that I did from wrestling. In fact, without wrestling, I would never have been as successful in MMA as I was, because I came in there with the work ethic. I came in there with a sort of mentality of like, this is gonna suck. It's okay that it sucks. Get comfortable with it sucking, and that's just Monday through Sunday. And then more importantly, the skill set of cutting weight, where other guys were like mentally weak about cutting 5 pounds. I thought to myself, 5 pounds, and I got 2 months to do it. I could do it in a weekend. Like, this is sure. You want me to fight at 35 2 months from now? Sure, I'm used to fighting, or I'm used to wrestling like 140 this tournament, 135 2 days later. You know what I mean? MMA in a lot of ways, and I know that wrestlers will agree when I say this, MMA is far easier than wrestling ever was, on my mental and my physical. The part where MMA was tougher was in the knowledge base, how much I had to learn, because there were so many ways to lose. I could lose by knockout. I could lose by submission. I could lose by points. I could lose by just an inferior game plan. When you said the lack of discipline in MMA, at first, I was like, no fucking way, Pat. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
MMA fighters are some of the most disciplined people that I know. But those people also came from a different martial art before they came into MMA. So I actually do agree with you when you say that. There's no, like, MMA. But, and by proxy of the definition, how could there be? Because MMA is a combination of martial arts, the sum of its parts, right? So you need to learn a part before you can start accumulating other parts. So I actually, now that I've extrapolated this thought real time, I agree with you 100%. I do think that MMA is lacking in one thing, and that is the discipline of having one basic path. But I will say, and I think you alluded to this, the accolade of it is the fact that it'll take people from other walks of life, like martial arts that don't necessarily have an avenue for competition, and it'll take them and kind of birth them in this. How many wrestlers that didn't hit the Olympic stage are now in the UFC? How many? I mean, Wonder Boy came from the kickboxing. What was the kickboxing tournament fight style that Sid G was the coach of? The guy that, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on this, but there were guys like Uriah Hall, Wonder Boy Thompson that were like karate guys that are now in the UFC.
Right.
There are guys that are Olympic level wrestlers that instead of like representing their country decide to come into the UFC. There's guys now like the Penn State wrestler who wins the NCAA championships and now is flirting with possibly like leaving school early to start MMA. Now he decided to come back and finish out his senior year. But regardless, I just think when you say the detriment is discipline, do you mean in the sense of it could possibly cause to the ruin of MMA? Or like when you say detriment, what are you alluding to?
Well, actually, I'm going to blow your mind and switch gears on you and say it could also hurt you.
What, like one discipline?
Just discipline in general. So the problem is...
All right, John Jones, relax.
So this...
Listen, I love a bender as much as the next man.
I know. So just hear me out. So discipline is lacking in MMA because it's not a single discipline. You learn all these disciplines, but at the same token, you can't have full discipline in that discipline. For instance, you know, your folk style wrestler, an old wrestling coach, is you drill the double and you run him across till he, you know, just take him into the next counter. You know? If you can't get it. Well, that's a detriment in MMA. If I'm drilling that double and I don't get it and I hit that kid and I don't get it, I got to switch the double, switch to the back, go to the back right, go to a spiral. I got to keep moving. I got to chain. And how many times have you seen that? Hardcore discipline rep. Bill Hall's Andrew Sanchez shot single, put it in, he sat down on him, and he stayed there. Ching, 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 ching. Never turned the corner, never did anything different with it. So it can also be the detriment.
Discipline can
hurt you.
Can blow up an ego.
Yeah, so that's the beauty of MMA. I was bringing this thing full circle. The problem is there is no discipline. The problem is you get too much discipline. It's MMA. You got to find that blend, that medium, and that's how you should train. The same way. You have to mix everything individually. You can't take all of wrestling. You can't take all of taekwondo. You can't take all of karate. It's a pirate, man. You got to pillage and pick, and then once you get it, you got to have the right ingredients, and then you got to blend them so that they all work out and they all flow.
But then that becomes an impossible task because it's like
you
have to know when to speed up, when to slow down, when to really commit, when to, hey, this isn't working, and then you add the variable of individuals. A Dakota Bush is different from Andrew Sanchez. An Andrew Sanchez is different from a Jake Collier, not just in personalities, but also weight classes. A 55er and a 70er or a 185er or a 215er or a heavyweight, you're talking about a completely different style, completely different technique. You might rely more on athleticism.
Right.
You might have to rely more on technique.
Why do you think it's so important to know who your opponent is? Because that's the game we play now. It's not about... The game, in my opinion, is knowing your opponent. Styles make fights. Yeah, we've heard that a million times. Now it's the game of studying your opponent and trying to use your methods against his methods, exposing his weakness against your weakness. That's what it came down to, game planning. Well, it's become game planning. I love the one with Moicano and Dakota when they worked on that last fight. And then Moicano made a post and he said, when a plan comes together or something, I don't know, game planning basically. And he showed them training for the kick, catch. So that's what this game is.
Preparation, leading to
That's why it gets crazy when you get a short notice fight. That's when things get crazy now. Because if you're preparing for a fight.
But that's at the highest level, though.
Exactly.
Because how many years of training do you have to get to the point where the only variables are that? Because it's like, I agree with you, by the way, that yes, like at a certain level, then it's like, what is, like, John Jones says it best, right? He's like, I watch so much film that I know their favorite punch. I know how they start a fight. I know all these things. But how many years of training do you have to do to get to that point? The entry-level guy who doesn't know how to throw a jab, we're not worried about the next opponent. We're worried about the fundamentals, brother. Keep your hands up.
Oh, yeah.
So when is that shift? When has that shift happened for a guy like Dakota or Sanchez? Like, when did they get so good that now it's like, hey, you know what? You're a great fighter now. Now we're worried about the next guy. Because how do you become the best in the world? By beating everybody in front of you. And if you do that enough, you become the best in the world.
Yeah. And like guys like Dakota, he outgrew my gym. I didn't have 55ers. We didn't have enough guys. So it was like, hey, we got to find something else. And Glory was down there, and that was great because they had a bunch of 55ers at the time. And I wanted to get him away, obviously you got Mike Rogers up here, had a killer gym. But I just needed to get him away, and I think it just worked good for him down. I'm thankful he did because he ran into Grant, and him and Grant were great together. And then when that thing fell through, and thankfully, Grant.
When you talking about fell through, you mean Glory?
Yeah, Glory.
Glory, sorry.
Yep. And so then the whole Grant thing, and he followed Grant down to Coconut Creek, and I think it's the best thing for him.
He said when he was on the podcast that he talks to you frequently on the phone and stuff like that. And by the way, I didn't know that he's your son-in-law. Yeah. That was hilarious.
Yeah. My daughter are on their way to, they're probably in Florida right now.
Yeah.
They're driving today.
When all this stuff is happening, how much of your job as a coach is not even being a coach, being more like a mentor or like just the guy that picks up the phone when people have questions? Because that has nothing to do with martial arts.
Yeah, no. That's what I've always told my guys, but even I'm teaching more than MMA here. I'm teaching life because I screwed it up. You know what I mean? So I was always a failure in life at times, So I never wanted them to go my path. My style that I always taught was opposite of who I was because I grew up on the VHS tapes, on the Gracie tapes. It was a totally different style than today. It was a defensive style. You know what I mean? Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was defensive. It was the art of the soft hand. Yeah, it was the bigger guy, smaller guy, And so I'm teaching guys, no. You ain't pulling guard. You ain't hanging out there. You're not doing I wear guys out on me. That's what I did. I'd get killed. You know what I mean? It's like these guys are machines nowadays. You can't hang out. There's no such thing as me and Dakota were talking about this over the weekend. I was like, there's no such thing as rest on defense. And we watched a couple of fights, and we were like, there it is. The guy, get up, drag his back leg back to the cage, and then you rest. It's like, there's no rest here. And then he got ankle picked and went back down. There's no rest on defense. You don't earn the right to rest on defense. You can rest on offense on top, but you can't rest on defense. And that's where you're seeing the problems come. Because if you rest, that guy's chaining. He's gonna find your weakness.
He's gonna try to build.
He's gonna expose you somewhere. If he keeps moving, he's gonna expose you. And so you cannot rest on defense. But our mentality in a lot of these guys, we get lazy where we think, okay, I can rest 5 seconds here. Okay, you just rested 5 seconds. Now it's gonna cost you 45 seconds to get up. Where I can spend 10 seconds right now and going nuts and get myself up, or I can rest for 5 and then spend 45 to get back up. So there's no rest there. And I don't know, it's just a different game. I see things better than I did when I was, I'm not so much coaching. I'm not coaching really at all now. I'm pretty much done. And my life is So much better.
When you say that you're not really coaching anymore, is that in the sense of like physically at the pit?
Yeah, I'm pretty much.
But these guys are still calling you.
Not really. I mean, I don't have anybody anymore because I really kind of just.
They
shut it
might
down.
not be under you, Pat.
Right.
But they're still calling you.
Sometimes. I mean, I've got Dakota, of course,
Yeah.
and then
I think
that's about it. I talk to Sanchez here and there. But
I think you're a coach for life.
Yeah. I've enjoyed it. Man, it's been a great year though. I've had so much fun since I've stepped back, and it's kind of like coaching. I never told you the burger story. Let me reverse
By
back.
all means, yeah.
There's so many places I've missed, and then I've got my brown belt under Shingatai Jiu-Jitsu under John Saylor out of Ohio. There's tons of things. I'm not a brown belt.
You got your brown belt.
I got one, but I'm not a brown belt. Trust me. And so anyway,
brother, I'm a white belt.
Yeah, so,
I'm not a white belt.
So trust me, it was through video, and we communicated that way. Anyway, that's another. I got so many stories, buddy. I'll get to the burger. I think it was Cage Championships 2 in Union. I did 3 shows in Union at the college. 05, 06 maybe. And there's a guy named Jim Sperry in the crowd, and I was sitting next to him, and I just watched Masvidal and Berger fight in Russia. I think it was Affliction.
Talking about Jorge Masvidal.
Jorge, yeah.
And Steve Berger from Burgers MMA.
Yeah. Which Mike Brown was in Jorge's corner.
Because he was at AT.
Yeah, it's
well,
crazy.
I don't know if it was ATT at the time. It was like whatever gym it was.
There was AT, but I don't think Mike was there. He was with the. I don't know. I don't know all that.
Times change.
It's
anyway.
crazy. So then he goes, man, I want to fight for you guys. I said, man, I'd love to have you. Give me your coach, because I was big on that. I never talk to fighters. I always
As a
talk
promoter?
to. Yes, absolutely not.
Really?
I was big on that.
Just
still
because
big
you
on
didn't,
that.
just because of like the respect
Disrespectful.
thing.
You
Yeah,
bet,
yeah.
man. I'm gonna go to that coach. I'm gonna talk to that coach. That coach should know better than what that fighter, because a fighter will say yes to anything.
What would you do about independent fighters? Would you try to get them a coach?
No, I mean, yeah, I would always try to steer him into a camp. And, hey, you need to get in this gym. I always did that, but yeah, independent's different. Of course, I'd talk to an independent fighter, but if they had a coach, no, who's your coach? Steve Berger. I was like, Steve Berger, man, I was a Berger fan, St. Louis, Missouri. I was like, yeah, give me his number. So they gave me Steve's number, and I call him up, and Steve was one of them guys that me and him just hit it off. I'm like, man, I want to come down. So I think he was in Finney's basement at that time, and I'd go down there and I'd train a little bit, and then we just became close. And then I was like, man, he'd come down onto the pit on Saturdays, and me and him would just go
at
all day, and he just beat the crap out of me. I was like, I thought I knew something, I was cocky. I never been beat. Nobody really challenged me. I'm running around fighting people that didn't know what they're doing. This guy,
well, Steve is also ex-UFC.
Yeah, and he's
been in some fucking wars.
Yeah, he was young. He was still young enough that I was like, I was older than him, by a few years. I think he's probably 50, maybe 50. I've got him by a few years. So I thought, man. But Steve is a mentor to me because he taught me the grind. Steve taught me the grind. And that was the most important part of my puzzle, in my opinion.
When you mean the grind in martial arts?
Yes, he just had a grind. He had a wrestler's grind, but he wasn't a wrestler. But he grinded. Steve, if you look at most of Steve's fights, he grinded, and he might be in a bad position. Always at the end of the round, he would be in a better position. It was like he just was longevity. He just, at the end of the rounds, he always ended up in a better position right before the fight ended. It's like, man, I always told Steve, you need 10-minute rounds, man. You'd win all your fights.
He told me on the podcast, he's like, to beat me, you got to kill me.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to keep going.
Absolutely. You're not going to hurt Steve Berger. Not going to hurt him. Absolutely not going to hurt him. But anyway, that grind, we would grind and we'd go fishing or something. But I miss those days, man. And we would that was it. Just me and him.
Miss those days in the sense of the camaraderie you had?
All of it. Man, me and Steve would, we've got some funny stories. I'm sure he could tell you some. I won't tell them, but.
When did you, okay, we're going to kind of move around. I really don't care anymore. I'm not even going to bring it up.
Yeah.
You wore many hats. You're like a
Oh,
coach.
gosh.
You're a promoter.
Oh, man.
When was it that you started dabbling in the promotion aspect, and more specifically, why?
Early.
Was it just to give the platform for the fighters? Was it money? Was it like, what was it for?
You know, obviously money was never the issue.
If you're going into the promotion for money,
It could be.
enjoy those margins.
Yeah. That's why they call them one and done, two and through, three and flee. So I guess I had nowhere to go. Steve would come down. He was my only thing. But before that, before I met Steve, there was just nothing. I didn't know where to go. You know, I heard this Rodrigo Vaghi guy, you know, but everything was an hour and a half away. You know, there's nothing close. I'm in Cuba, Missouri. There's nothing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, I started Chad Carone wanted to come up. He lived down the street from me. So we'd run to each other's houses. It was like 3 miles to each other's house. We'd run back and forth and train, run down, train, run to my house, train. And then I just was watching these fights, and that Cage of Honor existed. Cage of Honor was actually before me. And so I thought, man, let's do a show. So we started a show because the matchmaker from Cage of Honor wanted to help me because he was actually from my area, Sullivan area.
Okay.
James Stout was his name. I said, let's do it. So we matched 10 fights. I rented the Union at the college there, and you had to park, carry the cage up the hill into the venue, and then zigzag stairs up, and then across the gymnasium to the middle.
And for those that don't know, the cage comes in like, what, 20 different fucking parts?
I don't know, 6,000 pounds.
Yeah, and you got to put it together.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And thankful my cousin, Dave Workman, loved the guy, grew up with him. He did all this for free. He would drive the truck. He would load the trailer in the beginning. I mean, it wouldn't exist. Huh?
Product of passion.
Yeah, he loved it too. Me and him would watch fights together. Me and him been in a few fights together. I mean, we grew up together. He was a year older than me. I just seen him yesterday. I love the guy. Yeah, it was crazy why I got into it. I just thought that, man, we can do this, you know? I love this sport. I had a passion for the sport. I get 12 fights together. James Stout's all in, which is a great night. We're going night before. The guy that owned Cage of Honor called all of my fighters, said, you fight for him, you will not fight for me ever again. Lost 10 fights.
What a Jesse Finney move.
It was definitely bad. Yes, exactly. And so we get in there.
The anti-capitalist capitalist.
And it was like, but it wasn't going to beat me. I get in there, and I had guys like Colby Tierney.
Did they tell you, like, hey, so-and-so called me?
No. Well, they talked to my matchmaker at James at the time. And, of course, he felt horrible. You know, there's nothing he could do. I'm just a wreck. I got $4,000 in T-shirts.
Yeah, you're committed to
now,
this.
you got to remember, I had everything. I owned everything. Now, I had the cage. I had the lighting system. I had the sound system.
That's a huge investment.
Because I wanted to be, my whole military background, I want to be self-supportive. I roll in somewhere.
What do you think that was like, what, 25, 30 grand?
50.
50 grand, all in all. Mm-hmm. My man.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't have it. I had to take a Blue Sky loan, which thankful my hometown bank trusted me and said, hey, yeah. Because, I mean, who's going to give you that's Blue Sky,
no holds barred.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, here you go. Yeah. So, anyway, it was, and the funny part is, like, 5 years from that, I had pretty much nothing that I started with because I got rid of everything. I realized it's cheaper to hire it out and then own my own, carry it around, store it, take it out there, stage it. It's pay somebody to have them doing what they need to do. So we did that show, and it was crazy, and I lost all those fights. So I had, I think, 3 or 4 fights ended up. One fight, 2 guys drove down together, lost both their opponents, right? They fought each other. Best fight of the night. Best fight of the night. These guys.
Let's put it on the show.
I feel so bad. I can't tell you their names right now. And I apologize.
But you remember that fight?
I remember that fight, but I should know their names because it's disrespectful not to know their names because those guys put on a show. black eyes. I remember giving them some travel money or something. They're leaving. They're both, one eye shut, and they got to ride home together. And I'm just thinking,
Who's driving? No one can see.
Yeah, they're like 3 hours away, and I'm thinking, man. And then guys like Colby.
That
Tierney,
drive back must be.
I wanted to be in that.
Did you have to hit me that hard?
I remember telling them that. Man, I wish I could ride home with you guys. I want to hear what's going on. Because I thought they would pitter-pat around.
No.
They went at it. Now, you got to remember, this is new. And these guys beat the crap out of me. I got to find who these guys are.
Dude, since antiquity, everyone wants to be the biggest dog, right? Even amongst your friends.
Yeah.
Like,
But
in your group of friends who the top dog is. And if you don't, then you want to find out. Because the chances are it might be you.
Exactly.
Men
yeah,
are,
and so that fight happened, and then like I said, Colby Tierney stepped up and did a kickboxing with a guy from his gym, and Colby was so much better than this guy, so he's dragging him along in this fight, looking out for the guy because he didn't want to hurt the guy.
the guy also did him a solid. Took a fight that he probably didn't think he was going to
win. Colby's a plank owner. He was UFC 1 or UFC Cage Championships 1, and so so we had 3 or 4 fights. It wasn't many. So I remember I threw out $3,000 worth of T-shirts at the end of the fight. I'm just like, okay,
Thanks for coming out, guys.
I got to do something here because I wanted to crawl under the ring. I said, I can't do this.
Do you still have like the cards, like the bout cards with like 12 fights on them, and then you only got 4 fights on there?
Oh, now that I should have. I do. I have all my posters, everything.
No shit. Even for the first one?
I've got a mess.
Did anyone say anything to you, like, personally?
Well, that's what I was leading to is, so I remember I wanted to stay. I literally wanted to crawl under the cage. I mean, I seriously debated it because there was a little apron. I thought, man, I just get under here so let everybody leave.
Once again, all right, John Jones, who saw us in the gym.
So, I mean, hey, you want in this head, you're getting it, buddy. You might not like what you get. So,
it gets dark under the cage.
It's dark. And so I remember, so I wandered out in the lobby and caught the last group coming out. And I'm standing there thinking, and as I'm standing there watching everybody coming out, they're like, no, this guy. And I was like, wow. Nobody's, I thought everybody'd be pissed off, that, they got ripped off, And I was like, okay, that's not so bad. So then it went from there. There was a lot of people there too, believe it or not.
What year was the first show, if you remember? I'm not going to tell you like
2005 or 5 or 6, 2006 maybe October.
Yeah, that's
2006.
Was it 6?
2006.
What was the date? September?
October 6th.
October. Yeah.
October 6th, 2006.
I'm proud of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was 10/28, 2006.
Oh, so October 28th, 2006.
4 bouts was there? Yeah.
Let's see. You had David Myers, Andy Davis, Kyle McCann, Josh Bowen, Scott Bear, James Fletcher, and then Chase Miller and Matt Winkle.
That was one. That wasn't one. Was it?
No?
Was it one?
That was one.
To say?
Says one.
It's the internet. They don't lie.
Right. That was one, huh?
But anyway, you were talking about how like the first show was because of this matchmaker calling and the promoter calling and basically saying, "You fight for Pat, you're never gonna fight for me again."
First of all my fights.
First of all, after this fight, did you ever contact that promoter? Did you ever talk to him? Like, motherfucker?
We never.
Because that would have been the first thing I would have done.
Yeah, I think something. Yeah, it's been so long. I remember there was a little bit, and it changed hands. Cage of Honor's changed hands. I don't know who owns it now. Yeah, I don't remember whatever happened with. There was a little bit, but there was also a side of me that understood. You know what I mean? There's a part of me that understood that, it's like, man, this guy's been doing it longer than me. You got this new guy moving in, but I wasn't in his turf. That's what made the difference. I didn't move down to your turf.
I actually have to disagree. This is the first part I disagree with you.
Right.
Because it's
I
dude,
definitely.
I'm a competitor at heart.
You bet.
And the competitive spirit that I had in mixed martial arts, whatever, I carried with me to everything else. And the way I compete is like, if you're doing a thing, I'm going to meet you on even ground. I'm not going to try to like subvert you. I'm not going to try to like legal my way into it. No, you're providing a service or a good, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it better, or I'm going to do it cheaper, or I'm going to do a combination of both. We are competing now, just like in sport. I'm going to follow the rules, but I'll do it better. And when I see people that are, I don't want to use the word mischievous, but they don't operate in good faith.
Sure.
You're not competing
Right.
now against the rules. You know, we're playing basketball, and you don't want to dribble anymore because I'm a better dribbler. What the
Right.
fuck?
Right.
Like, you can't just change the rules. And that's the kind of shit that they do. And I can't respect that because the basis of capitalism is like, let's compete. Let's compete. And whoever has the best product for the best price, the cream will rise to the top. This shit is like pearl clutching. It's gatekeeping.
Right.
And who benefits and who doesn't. Who benefits? This one individual. Who doesn't benefit? The other 10 guys that didn't fight that night.
Exactly.
And that is not okay.
No, it's definitely not okay with what he did with the fighters that were going to fight. But I've always cut my own path. I've always took a machete. I never took the path that was beaten down. I've always wanted my own path. This case, that path has already been cut. And so Cage of Honor was there before me, hands down. But I wasn't in their turf.
Yeah, yes, but
So
no.
there's my problem. That's
They're
my
what,
problem.
2 hours away?
Well, you got to understand who I am. I'm trying to tell you what's inside this head is I cut my own path. I don't want to follow someone. I was not following Cage of Honor, but they existed before me. So I have to tip my hat. I have to give acknowledgement that you were here first. So I'm not going to your turf. I respect that you were there and wherever he was. Where was he at the time? Southern Missouri, somewhere down in there. Yeah, but to do this up here, but I'm trying to think if he did a show somewhere around
Can
there.
I extrapolate that a little bit? Meaning, you would never do a show in his town. You were fine doing a show, and you thought it was so far removed that it would be okay.
But he's done shows in that area. So see what I'm saying?
Okay.
I'm not that guy. I didn't want to do that. So that's what kept me from. I'm trying to remember back that far, but I remember realizing, hey, it's part of the game. I wasn't as upset as you think. I was bummed out for these guys the opponents, but it worked. The bottom line is it worked, and I got into this game, man, and I've always been that way. I've never had an issue that I got into your game. I might not like the rules, but I'm in your game. And in my mind, it was Cage of Honor's game. I was walking into their game. So
What did you learn from that first show?
man, that I can take a lot of stress. That sometimes you get so close to the problem that you see things that other people can't see. If you're, I build decks for a living, and sometimes I see things because I'm right there. Step back, you don't see them. Sometimes you see them because you're so close to it that sometimes you need to step back and look at it and realize, okay, it's not that visible. It's not that bad. Just, but at the time it was brutal. I mean, it was brutal. I thought I'd never do another show.
But you did.
I did 60 of them.
Yeah. And when I talked to Dakota, he said that the way he met you was actually through that. Because when he started his amateur career, he actually didn't have a gym. He basically just like trained in his backyard with like some of his friends or
and
whatever.
there's somebody in St. Clair that he was training in some shed or something.
Yeah. And then when he suffered his first loss, I believe that's when you reached out to him and you said like, hey, like you should come down to my gym.
It was on my show.
Yeah, exactly. He lost on your
So
show.
was Jake's.
Yeah.
His first loss on my show.
Why did you do that for Dakota? And then let's start with that. Why did you do that for Dakota? You see this guy lose. Why did you tell him to come to your gym?
I don't remember all the innards and outards of that thing. I do remember his loss.
Yeah, because like how many people have lost that you didn't call and tell them to come to your gym?
Right. There's just some people you just want. I've had not quite a few, but a good handful of guys that I see, and I'm like, I want that guy. How he carries himself, what he is, and a lot of them didn't work out. Well, most of them didn't work out. Dakota did. It's like I don't know, something about this kid. I like his energy. I like his drive. Something can be done here. And then it just worked out. I don't know, but the guy he was training with, Rick Hufford, came down a few times to my gym, and then I ended up cornering Rick a few times for a couple of his fights on my fight, because Rick had come down and cross-train, then I'd go down there and do a seminar for him at his gym. And that's where Dakota was too. Or I think where he started. He might have started with somebody else, then ended up at Rick, then at my place, something like that.
Semantics.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, it was good stuff, man. No.
What was it about? Some people own a gym. Some people promote. Some people manage. You kind of dabbled in like a lot of these things. Like when was it? The pit did not exist when you decided to promote. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it was already in existence.
Really? Mm-hmm. So you had created your own gym and then subsequently created a promotion.
Right. Well, I had a shed. And then I thought,
Still a gym.
I knew that to be a promoter at that time, you had to have a stable of fighters to make it work. You're not, especially coming in a new turf, and there wasn't very many promotions out there. And I already found out that you ain't taking from other promotions. This is dog eat dog, yeah. And so I'm like, well, I definitely knew I had to build them. And so that to me was my attribute, if I had one, was that I could build somebody quick, fast, and in a hurry. I wasn't a long-term guy. I wasn't obligated to a gym-style atmosphere where we had to work this far, this, and then you had to do all this to get to the white belt. I didn't have all that hanging on my head. Once again, this is why I had the advantage. So it's not fair. I'm not even in the same category, like I said, with Mike Rogers and his gyms. We're not even in the same hemisphere. I don't have the rules that he's playing by. Does that make sense? I'm not obligated by a business or this or that. It's a crash course at the pit. You're getting a crash course and a grind. We're not even in the same hemisphere. So when he says put me in the same categories as Mike and Steve, we're not in the same hemisphere. These guys are here. I'm working at a different level.
I think that's incredibly humble to say. But with respect, you don't get to say that. The consensus of the masses is judged by the masses. Right. And if that's how you're judged, I often say that, what people say about you is the truth because that's what's said. So, like, you might be the nicest guy in the world, but if everyone calls you an asshole, guess what? You're an asshole. Right. Why? Well, because that's how everybody knows you. So you may have this, like, humble respect for, like, Berger and Rogers.
Absolutely.
And by the way,
100%.
I love that.
Those are my mentors.
However, when I talk to fighters, myself included, we look at the stable of guys that you have produced and they've produced and everything. It's not a competition of like, who's like the number one on this Mount Rushmore. No, there's a Mount Rushmore. There can only be 4. 3 of those are you, Steve, and Mike. And that's like Dan O'Connor, Dakota, me, Lucas Clay. Like, ask fighters. Ask the fighters. Ask the people that are quote unquote credentialed enough to make that opinion. That's what they say. And listen, I think maybe now that I stepped away from it and I've been to so many gyms, everyone does things their way. Sure. And there's pros and cons to every gym you go to. Absolutely. I could list the gyms I've been to and I could tell you what they did good and what they did bad. But I would also always tell you that every gym that I've ever been to was good because they always taught me something, even if it was there for like a week.
100%.
I don't necessarily, I want to be careful how I say this. It is a competition, yes, but for the fighters. At the end of the day, you guys are mentors to all the fighters. And it's like, let that be the competition. I'm not competing the men. I'm not saying that, Mike is better than Steve and Steve is better than Pat or Pat is better than Steve. I don't care about that shit. I really don't. No. I care that there was 3 guys that have helped shape. Between you 3 guys, I could probably fill, a room of like 150 young men and women with the lives that you guys have helped shape in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's the true beauty, and that's why you guys belong on like the same pedestal of respect and admiration from my peers, the guys that fought when I fought, because I didn't do the things that you guys. I haven't built. You keep saying a shed. I don't have a fucking shed where I'm training killers, brother. I don't care how many square footage it is. You know what I mean? You created killers, like true mixed martial arts badasses. That's amazing. I don't have a single accolade like that in my life. Mike has some. Steve has some. Maybe some has more than others. I don't really give a shit about that. The fact that you even made one.
Yeah, I mean,
that's amazing.
I've been so lucky, man. It's effort too. I live the game, and that's why I got out of the game. I was talking to Mike Brown about this. It's like he's like, so why aren't you doing it more? And I said, I'm no longer a student of the game. I said, what happened was one day I was watching MMA, and it was out here hanging out, and I turned around to get something, and I turned back, and I seen MMA go over the horizon. I said, I just couldn't keep up with it. MMA is moving forward. If you are not living MMA every day, it's going to leave you behind. It's going to leave you behind.
Do you mean the evolution of the sport?
Mm-hmm. I'm not a student. Dude, I would wake up at night I had a notepad. I'd write everything down, put it back.
Like thoughts about.
I'd fall asleep, wake up in the morning and be like, damn, that's my handwriting. Whoa. I like that. You know,
Like you'd have just.
I
like,
didn't even
ideas.
remember it. There was times I wrote things I couldn't even remember.
What would you write though? Like
I still got
armbar
'em.
from this
Oh, yeah.
position.
Yeah, I
You
still
were
got
just
'em.
breathing
I would
and
draw
living
it.
that
I
life.
would draw the design. I would draw a picture, and I'm not an artist, so it's brutal. But I understood it. I still have all my books. I actually started one called Sumo Thai Jiu Jitsu back in 93, 94. Right 94. It would have been after UFC. I called it Sumo Thai Jiu Jitsu. And then I capitalized the S, the M, and the I, and the T, and the H in it for Smith. But I said Sumo Thai. I made up my own art, and I would improvise things and try things out and bogus stuff.
You don't seem like a guy that has this. I want to be careful the verbiage I use. You don't seem like you're tied to MMA as like a person. I'm sure that there's like Pat Smith, the coach, and then there's like Pat Smith, the individual.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is that to separate? Because when I look at Mike Rogers, it's like all the same to me. He's like Mike Rogers the father, he's Mike Rogers the coach, Mike Rogers the roofer, Mike Rogers the guy who helps everybody. And then same thing with Steve. Like when I look at Steve and the way people talk about Steve, I'll tell you what was the catalyst. I always wanted you on this podcast, but the catalyst for making it like immediate was talking to Dakota. And I'm becoming a fan of Dakota as he's talking to me. And then the way he's talking about you subsequently makes me a bigger fan of you. Because it's like, this guy in front of me is amazing. He's hardworking, honest, diligent, all these other things. Good man, good family man. A lot of the moral characteristics that you would want in an individual. And then the way he's talking about the mentor that he's had in his life is infectious. And I'm like, Dan, I remember leaving, I go, I got to get Pat on this fucking podcast immediately. And that's when I reached out to you. But that's not all you are. But how hard is that to like, you say you're out of the game. I don't believe that.
Oh, I'm a bigger fan. I'm a huge fan. I mean, I am finally what I've always wanted to be.
A spectator?
Yes, absolutely.
I don't believe that.
I want in, but I'm a different type of spectator.
Yeah, but that's not a spectator,
It's
my
different
man.
though. But when you're a fan, man, how do I explain this? It's so difficult. It's kind of like when you first. I used to be with the guys, and we'd warm up together, because that was the way it was. You got to be in there with the guys, and I realized that, to me, that's fallacy. That was not true. The more I stepped away from being with the guys, the more I became a better coach. In my mind, now, they might argue that, I don't know, but I started seeing things better. When I quit holding mitts, for one, my shoulders they're jacked. I still hate holding. I can't because my shoulders are jacked.
I had Jake Collier hitting mitts too.
Oh
man.
gosh,
I'm out.
that sucks,
I'm
man.
out.
Jake hit like a freight train, so that sucked. And it's funny. I started making them. We started doing just everybody holds their gloves, and we hit gloves, back and forth. And then they started complaining about that. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna start
Get it
ruining
now.
hands and gloves.
So I mean, and Jake when he hit too, it wasn't always just speeding. It was that I always called it like a 30-30 shot. You got the 243 that hits you, bam. Then you got the 30-30 that's just like.
it just goes through.
Just boom, and that's how he hit. And so it's like, But anyway, when I stepped back, I feel like I grew more because I seen more. Hey, your foot's out. I was always a big, my guys know that I'm a stance guy. Because if you can teach stance and you can teach people to move inside their hips, then everything else is easy. And so guys that learn stance, anywhere they ever went, they never had any issues. Guys were like, hey, man.
It's the basis. It's your
basis. But most people
status
don't
of
understand
motion.
stance. You should be able to pick up any foot you want from stance without having to tilt to pick it up. I should be able to flow on my hips so that, so stance was always big. So if you got that, then the rest was easy. And that's what I've always wanted. And I've always told my guys, I don't care where you go. Go anywhere you want. You're always where you want to be in life. I never made it sound like if you went here, you're done. You went here, you're done. You went, hey, if that's better for you, go for it.
That's rare.
Once again, it's not fair to judge it like that because I'm not a business. If I was a business, that would probably have to change, or I would probably be out of business.
With all due respect, I think the business part is actually the least capable variable.
Maybe.
When people leave gyms,
But I don't have that over my head.
fair, but from when I left gyms, it felt like a breaking of a bond. No one ever called me and said, "Oh man, there goes that $100 a month that Ariana was." You know what I mean?
Right.
They were like, "What do you mean you're leaving?" Like when I left St. Charles to go to the Wolves Den, I remember it felt like I had torn a bond with
Like a
people.
girlfriend.
Yes,
Losing a girlfriend.
Mike never called me about money that I owe. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and then when I left the Wolves Den to go train in South City, it was like a very similar feeling. Like you go in, you develop a bond, you have like this relationship with these people. It wasn't the case that no one ever told me I couldn't leave. No one ever had a conversation with me.
Right.
But it was more of like this inclination that if you do leave, you're doing a disservice. And I think if I wouldn't have felt that, then I wouldn't have felt. I've never said this actually, but I'll say it to you now. There was a moment there when I wanted to leave the Wolves Den that I actually wanted to go back to St. Charles MMA and not go to Finney's. But the problem was I felt like I had burned that bridge. This was young me, like 6 years ago, right? And I thought to myself, the way I left St. Charles MMA was not good. I never said anything bad or anything like that, and neither did they. But it was like, like a love that kind of just exploded and then dissipated. So that's why I went to Finney's. But now with the relationship that I have with Mike now, like, post all of this other stuff, hindsight being 2020, I could have easily just walked back into that gym, said, "Hey, Mike," shook his hand, said, "I fucked up, I'm sorry. Can I come back?" I know he would have said yes.
Absolutely.
And then to that point, if I would have told Mike, next time I go, it'll be cross-training, I'm just going in there to learn some other shit, I'm sure it would have been fine. But when you say things like, these guys don't pay me, they're not owed to me, that's not why I think it's amazing that you're so transparent with cross-training and all these other things. It's because you have enough ego to train these guys while simultaneously being stoic enough to let them go out. That's a skill set, brother. That's not easy.
Yeah, I just never, like I said, if you go by the mentality that everybody is where they want to be, if you keep that mentality, you're going to be where you
You're
want to
also
be.
human. Don't you
I
want
know,
them to be
but
with you?
I do, but if I can't give you what you need, I want you to have what you need.
That's why it's special.
Yeah, you have to have, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's weird.
I think it's an admirable quality, if I might say.
I appreciate that, and I would love to claim it like I'm doing it in that sense.
Intentionally?
It's just I don't want you here if you don't want to be here. Let's just say that. If you don't want to be here, why do I want you here? You know what I mean? I don't understand that. To me, it makes perfect sense. And sometimes we get involved too much in other people's stuff, and maybe we shouldn't. You know what I mean? You try to. I was at Thanksgiving, and my dad is always teaching me lessons. Always teaching me lessons. And we sit down, and we're sitting like on a corner of a table. He's here, and I'm here, and he sits down with pumpkin pie. I look over, and it didn't look like pumpkin pie. It was a little dark. It had no whipped cream on it. So it couldn't have been pumpkin pie. And so I'm like, "What you got there?" He goes, "Pumpkin pie." And I was like, I just got finished with my plate. And I go, he's 80, or no, he's 79, gonna be 80. And I said, "Well, that ain't pumpkin pie because it doesn't have whipped cream all over it." And I said, you got to have whipped cream or it's not pumpkin pie. And he's got a mouthful, and he takes his spoon and he pokes my plate with it. And he goes, this is your plate. This is my plate. And he kept eating. And I looked at him and I'm
like, shut the fuck up.
I'm like, once again, Dad, you're teaching me life lessons. Stay out of your business. You know, and so I get so much from my dad. Love my dad. But he's always taught me like that. So I've always taught like that in the same mentality. I teach that same way. I teach, hey, if it's better over there, go. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Are you an idiot? Go over there. If it's better for you, go over there. But to get back to all the way back to the beginning was you asked about how that works. Is first you got to care about him. I mean, you can't fake that. You don't give a crap about these guys.
That's why I think it's so hard, because if you do care about these guys,
it's very hard.
Isn't there some like separation? Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it hurts.
So Dakota comes to you and says like, "Man, I'm thinking about going out to Glory." I mean, there's a part of you that's like,
well, that wasn't so hard with him because I didn't have
the bodies.
I had 55ers, and it was tough. And I've always had to work at, and a lot of these guys don't understand what took place in that gym. You know what I mean? I'm thankful for every single one of them. They were all a piece of the puzzle. But I had to, I was always thinking, even though they might not have thought I was, but I was always thinking like, we got Jake, okay, at the time he was 85er, and he was a machine. When Jake was 85, he was a machine. And so it's like, okay, I don't have the guys for him. This guy's good in the clinch. This guy's got a decent top game. This guy's got a great guard. Okay. Jake, circuits, ready? 5 minutes. 30 seconds with him in the guard, 30 seconds with him in the clinch, 30 seconds. I had to find ways of dividing times with their best attributes against Jake every time. So I could only use 15 seconds of this guy's attribute against this guy. So I had to scatter it out in circuits like that. And that's how I did my circuits. So I would have to find whoever was best in their area. I told them, just give me everything for 20 seconds in this area. That's it. And that's how we've trained. Because that's all I could do. That's all I had. I didn't have big gyms. I didn't have a wrestling coach, boxing coach, judo coach, jiu-jitsu coach. I didn't have all these things. It just is me trying to make this thing happen. But I did understand MMA. Like I said, I understood MMA. And I struggled with that and thought I wasn't the good coach. But I was put in a unique situation. Then Sanchez comes along, and I got to travel with him. And, man, that's when the world opened up. I got to corner with Marat Keshkov, corner with him and get in his mind and see his grit and his grind. And my stuff made sense to him, and his stuff made sense to me. And I was like, maybe I am doing it right, And then I got to corner with Conrad Pla, who owned TriStar and sold it to Faraz Navabi. Then I got to corner with Faraz Navabi, and I got Nerm Heads, and I got to bounce things and make sense. And I got to corner with James Krause. Then I got to corner with John Woods from Syndicate in Vegas, and you know what I mean? And then I got to go down and see Rolly Delgado and get in his mind and love Rolly. I need to go down and see him, by the way. Hi, Rolly. Hope you're listening. Great mind. There's so many great minds out there. You know what I mean? But it's like when you get around those, you realize you're on the right track. You get it. Mike Brown. Good gracious. That guy's a genius. This guy, I've only been around him, a time before Grant's fight, and I'm thankful I get to go out there for his next fight in California. And I can't wait to spend time with Mike. He's a genius. He gets it. They're not there to build guys from the ground up. They've already got it. Now it's the master plan. You know what I mean? It's the master plan.
What do you think is harder, giving somebody the fundamentals or honing them?
Gosh, dang it.
Because that's both are hard in completely different ways, right?
I'm just scratching the surface of the second one. I prided myself in the fundamental guys. But what I find out is the more I get around guys, besides my guys, but getting around Grant Dawson's and stuff, fundamentals is key, man. They want fundamentals more than anything. You know what I mean? So we talk more fundamentals than anything else.
When you say fundamentals, you mean like I want to do this justice. When you say fundamentals, you're not talking about arm bars?
No.
Like, what do you mean by fundamentals? Like,
what are fundamental movements? Fundamental
motion,
stances, fundamental
feints.
motions, fundamental. Yes, it's like Steve Berger's king of saying, like, oh, I had 2 arms and 2 legs for thousands of years. Not like anything's going to be new. He's right on. I agree 100% with that. But we all know how to punch and we all know how to kick. We all know all these things. But the difference is in that variable, that slight variable, because every fights are won in transition. You know what I mean? The transition is where the game is played now. It's not played. It's played in the transition of moving from here to here. As I transition out of my stance, that's when I get in trouble. I've always got to get home. That's why I was taught stance is home. And guys always would tell me, well, you're not training these guys. They need to get their head off center. They need to learn head off center. I first have to teach them center.
Yeah.
And that's where people go wrong. They don't teach guys center. I got to know where my center is. If I don't know my center, I can never get back to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where I think a lot of people go wrong when they're teaching. Is like, you got to teach people to get your head on center. First, they got to understand where center is. Now that I know center, now I can get off. And like Dakota will tell you that I want to teach you how to do something so I can show you how to cheat it.
Yeah.
You can't cheat what you don't know. So once I learn this, I can learn to cheat. I can know where to cheat and where I can get away with things. But first, I got to know it.
Jay used to teach me when I first came in. He's like, first I'm going to teach you all the rules. Then I'm going to teach you how to break all the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how he always worded.
I agree
He's
with
like,
that.
martial arts is like there's like a set of rules that we all need to understand. And when you understand them, good. Then
Now we can start
real
winning.
martial
Yeah.
arts is learning how to break all of those rules while simultaneously knowing when to come back to them. So it's funny that you say that because it's you and Jay would have had.
Oh, I'm sure.
I don't know if you ever talked to him when he was alive.
He used to ref.
Yeah, he was
and he was a coach for, or not a coach.
He was a different kind of
judge.
guy,
Sure.
very socially
Yeah.
awkward, but like when it came to like his passion, it was unarmed
Everybody
combat.
has something to offer, man.
Yes.
You learn from everybody. There's so much. That's why I say when people, I'm a cumulative of so many people. I wouldn't even know where to start. I've pillaged and picked from so many things, from books to VHS. I mean, we're all a part of something. No man is an island in this game.
I agree.
So it's if you learn all that, I think that's what I'm getting at. Is now I'm learning that at this level, being around these high level guys now is so cool, and I don't know how it all happened, but it all worked out. I've just had a great year. I've got to experience things. I got to sit front row at the Apex for the first time. Grant gave me a ticket and brought me in.
Well,
and
brother, it was a
that was awesome.
It was a lifetime's work.
Oh, it was. And then before that, then I get a call and Matt Hughes asked me to go sit front row for the St. Louis UFC. Thank you. That was amazing. I mean, it's like, wow, this is what it's all about. That was so cool, man. You talk about a fan. That is so cool. I could die tomorrow and be like, yeah,
Accomplished.
I made it. You know?
Are you, when you say like you're like a fan?
I'm
a
a super fan.
I think I understand like you have a passion for the craft. And the
Yeah,
sport and everything.
I love the sport.
But you were saying earlier that you were done coaching. Where are you at today?
I
if
think
you don't
it's
mind me
more of a
asking?
mentoring side now. Now I think I'm more of the side that I want to mentor more. I want to be there.
What is the pit then without you?
I don't know anymore. I haven't even thought about that. This logo that you have that this is my sporting side, my fishing. I call it pit gear. Is more of the grind and just I love fishing. I love
It's
extreme.
not necessarily only tied to.
Smith Pit was the pit.
Got you.
Now this I call pit gear is just the passion, man. And for me it's fishing, shark fishing. It's getting out there. I don't get on boats. I don't hire guides. I get out there. I cut my own path. I get in the ocean and I walk as far as I can and fish for these things and get on their turf, and it's just a passion. So I love shark fishing. I mean, I just love topwater fishing. I love doing everything the hardest way. And then people that know fishing obviously know that topwater fishing in the ocean is the hardest type of fishing. Everybody uses live bait. This is just my style. I just want to feel good about what I did. I want to know I didn't pay this guy. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with guides. I used to be one. paying money, going out, sitting, drop your line, fishing. That's just not me. I want the experience. It's not, Deep Purple said it best. It's not the kill, it's the thrill of the chase. I want the thrill of the chase. I don't want the kill.
That's beautiful. I was saying it when we were taking a break that, and I didn't mean to sound, disrespectful when I said this, but before you came on, I had an idea of who you were, and I knew the kind of guy you were. But one of the things that has really amazed me is the depth, the intellectual depth, which I know that might sound like, you're like, hey, brother, come on. No, but.
No, I'm like, man, I don't even know what that word is. When I get home, I'm going to look it up, and me and you're going to finish this conversation. Intellectual.
Lucas Clay said it yesterday, and what's funny is that episode hasn't aired yet, but he said something along the lines of, Mike Rogers has done so much for me and so much for all these other people, yet if you talk to him about it, he doesn't like talking about it. Mm-hmm. He doesn't like the compliments. He's kind of like, oh, okay, like, you know what I mean? And there's like some sort of like humble stoicism. Same thing with Berger, same thing with you. You guys all share this like common trait of humbling yourselves constantly. You say that you're not smart, yet you drop fucking knowledge on me today about like the discipline in MMA that I originally thought, I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? And then you said another quote, and I was like, oh my God, what a fucking genius moment. You're absolutely correct. Why does it seem that all three of you share this Venn diagram of stoicism? Was it something, do you guys talk often? Because
not as much as I'd
seems like it seems like you guys are kind of like separate. Yet when I look at all of you, you share so many qualities.
That's what I'm saying. Is it's when you get around these people, it's like I was telling you with Rolly and with Murat and with Conrad and with Mike Brown. It's like it all makes sense. We're talking the same things. I mean, obviously he's a game planner, so he's in a whole different level than I'm at, but the basic understanding, we all have the basic understanding of MMA. You know what I mean? How we go about it's the difference, but that's where most people don't have a basic understanding of MMA, in my opinion. They think they do. I thought I did, but we also know what it took to get here, and no, we didn't get here on our own. You know what I mean? I always give credit where credit is due. So I'm going to make an argument to you. So you talk about this Mount Rushmore. I'm going to put the first guy on the list, and that would be Rodrigo Vaghi. So agree. Without Rodrigo Vaghi,
you don't get a Mike Rogers. You don't get a Steve Berger.
And not just that. Let's see what that would do to the MMA world in St. Louis.
Yeah,
maybe it would have affected me. Even I'm an outsider, but it probably would have affected me somehow. I mean, this guy's ripple effect would have affected people you wouldn't think.
Everybody.
It's like the what's the Christmas one with Jimmy Stewart? What's the Christmas movie where what would happen if he wasn't alive?
Oh yeah.
It's a Wonderful Life. Same
you make
thing.
one small change,
yeah,
and the outcome that can have.
What if we didn't have Rodrigo Vaghi?
I want to have him on the podcast so bad.
That's the Mount Rushmore. He is the Mount. Let's just make it easy. Let's make it easy. Let's eliminate who's on Mount Rushmore. Let's just have one and give it to Rodrigo, and let's move on.
He would be the generation before you. Like we were talking about generations before, so like there was me, and then before me there was like the Sampos, and then before the Sampos there was the Steve Berger's, the Mike Rogers, and then before the Steve Berger's, Mike Rogers was the Rodrigo Vaghi. I agree with you 100% in that sense, but I guess when we were talking about like that specific timeline, we're also like working with the purview of the gentleman in a class, right? So like you have like the senior class, the junior class, the sophomore class. You guys are all kind of in a class. I wholeheartedly agree that without Rodrigo Vaghi, we're literally not sitting here having this conversation. Because I would never have met Mike.
Sure.
And I would
exactly.
I wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
So I do agree 100%. You got to give it where it
goes, yeah.
You were saying something about in this point in your career that like you were looking at MMA and then you looked away and then you came back and it went over the cliff.
In the sense of
the game's changing.
In the sense of I could still go back and I have the utmost confidence I could take someone that has any kind of athleticism of any sort and make them into a fighter. No doubt in my mind. I know I've gotten to the point in my career where I know what it takes to do that. And that's where I'm not interested in anymore.
Really?
You know what I mean? It's like, I know what it takes. I can't wear it anymore.
Because it's a commitment, man.
I can't wear it anymore. Because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to want it more than they do. And I'm going to go in wanting it more than, and then I'm just going to not, I'm not going to meet that expectation.
Do you think a variable in that is also the fact that you've seen the top? Like,
I like the top.
Yeah. It's
I'm going to be honest with you. I like relating to athletes that are there.
Yeah.
Because they get it.
Not just that, but I'm saying, like, you're in the back at a UFC event.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever it is that's fighting, whether it's Sanchez, whether it's Collier, whether it's Dakota, whoever.
Mm-hmm.
The very next fight might be Heart of St. Charles Banquet Center.
Mm-hmm.
That whiplash of, like, top of the mountain, now we're back at the base.
Mm-hmm.
Does that ever factor in, like, this thought process of, like, your trajectory now? Because it's like, you know, you've done that for so long, quote unquote, been in the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're kind of, I don't want to say the words above that because, like, no one's above that.
No, absolutely
But
not.
you get used to a certain level of competition that kind of going back feels like a step back. Do you think that's a factor in it or not at all? You could tell me, Arion, I get it.
No,
not
no,
for
no,
me.
no, absolutely.
Because you're used to getting people ready for
No,
top
no.
15 in the world. Now you're helping Jimmy
Yeah, no.
get ready for his amateur debut.
No, absolutely not. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with about the person you're talking about and their attitude. But what I do enjoy now more than ever is being around people that are at the top. Because I enjoy their story, like what you're doing. You get to interview people and get their story. That's what I'm about, man, because it's like, I've always said that. I told you that in the bathroom, I think, where I said, if you want to get good at something, surround yourself by people that are better at it than you are.
Or passionate.
Yes, or more passionate. I mean, don't be an idiot, you know. I just never had that advantage because I was out in Cuba, Missouri. And not to say that I was better than anybody there, but nobody had the passion that I had there to do what I want to do, and I couldn't find anybody that could train me. I couldn't find any, so, you know, thank goodness, I ran into Burger, and then thank goodness, somehow the connection from probably Jason Cooper, my matchmaker, I think connected with John Minke, and then that's how I got in with John Minke, who got me in with Mike Rogers, and then that whole thing flourished. Mike Rogers and St. Charles MMA changed the fabric of cage championships. I mean, Burgers guys were good too. I don't want to dismiss everybody that helped everybody. There was so many gyms, you know, from Rob Ward and Sullivan had, you know, the Outlaws and the Dogs of War out of Fort Wood.
When you say change, you mean by offering you the labor pool of fighters.
But not just a pool of fighters. They were on a different level.
Real motherfuckers.
Yeah. So, I mean, you started having the Al Bostelich, the Lance Benoist, the Matt Rice Houses, the Brandon Cronins, even the
Josh Sampo,
even Jason.
By the way, I say motherfuckers with extreme respect.
yes, and I remember Jason McVeigh was just was a killer, and he's an old Marine, and coming from the Navy, man, I love that guy. I haven't seen the guy in years. You probably don't even remember me, but love that guy. And the reason I say I want to tell you a Jason McVeigh story. We were at the Cage Championship. I just met this guy, and there were some problems going on over somewhere, and I was talking to him at the time. He was getting ready for his fight. And some stuff came out. A guy came up and said, "Hey, man, we got some issues over here. Jason's getting ready to fight." He's like, "Hey, what's up? You need some help?" I'm like, no, but
glad to lend a helping hand.
And now you're one of my favorites. And Julius, same way. I got a Julius story.
Anglicus?
Yeah.
No shit?
We had Civil War, which was... And I need to tell you another story after this. Steve Berger and Mike Rogers, we did a show with Steve Berger's guys versus Mike Rogers' guys called Civil War.
Okay.
Rough part of town. 17 cars got broke into. It was horrible. And I had my wife and my family there. And here's this monster of a man, Julius Anglicus, shows up. He was new to the gym, I guess. And I don't know him. He don't know me too well. And he introduced me. I was like, hey, yeah. And my wife comes up. She's like, hey, I got to go there. And I said, I'll walk in. There was chaos going on. I said, there was a lot of issues. And Julius goes, I'll walk them to the car. And I'm
Thanks, brother.
like, dude, you don't even know my family. And you're ready to just walk. This is St. Louis. You need to realize that, you know. And I'm looking up to this guy thinking, you're my new hero, man. So he's like a superhero. So love Julius. I'd take a bullet for that, man. Anybody that would step up for my family, not knowing me, I mean, it sounds so cliche, but you got to remember, that was rough. And we can say he plead ignorance that he didn't know the city and all that, but he knew what was going on, and he just walked my...
Or just the fact that he would be willing to.
Dude, willing to. He walked him to the car and back after there's 17 break-ins and busted windows. It was a mess. Let's tie that story together. So me and Steve were really close. Mike was involved with Cage, but...
Steve Berger.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And now I'm telling my side of the story. So this is just my vision. So I'm not saying this is all absolute truth. So this is what I seen.
My perspective.
Loved Steve. I loved Mike. At the time, I was closer to Steve because me and Steve were together a lot more. And he told me the story of Mike and the friendship and the growing up, the one you heard. And I'm like, man, that is so awesome, man. I was jealous of it. I'm like, dude, you guys got to fix this. So I made it my goal. That was what Cage Championships was about. I'm going to get these two together.
Did they have a rift?
Well, they were divided. He left the gym and all that. You know, that's a story you'll have to talk to them about. Well, when Steve was with Rodrigo, you know.
When he left, I didn't think that caused a big rift between them, did it?
No, they were, but there's still two different gyms. You know, you leave a gym, there's going to be rift.
Yeah, but I thought, maybe I'm incorrect, but Mike and Steve were still cool.
Yeah, they kind of were, but, you know,
But
it's
also
still a
kinda
different. Yeah, you know, it was they weren't the way they were.
Mm.
You can't be. You can't be in a gym together all the time and then leave, and then you still got this gym, you got this gym. It's not going to
Meaning
happen.
there was some...
I'm not going to get into that.
Fair.
I'll let you handle that with them.
It's interesting because when
There's a
I talked to
difference.
Mike, he didn't bring it up. And when I talked to Steve, he didn't bring it
Right.
up. So it might be one of those things where it's like better left in the past.
It is best left in the past. The most important part is that they're not there. There's a divide because they're in different gyms. And so my whole goal was to get them at the same place together.
By virtue of
They
your
got
promotion.
fighters and they're on my card, and he's got fighters on the card, and then it started, and then eventually
They got back to normal.
I don't know if it's normal, but
So what you're trying to say is you're a matchmaker?
I'm a matchmaker. I'm a man of many hats.
Part-time,
So no, but that meant-
part-time killer creator,
But man, you heard the
part-time.
stories, man. You heard the Burger Rider stories. They're amazing. I was like, man, these guys grew up together down the street. I mean, that's a great story.
Dude, I didn't
That
know.
was awesome, man.
When Steve told me that
Oh.
on the podcast, that was the first time I
Oh,
heard
it's
it.
awesome.
When he told me that Mike was his neighbor and that's how they knew each
yeah.
other, my very first question was like, how did you and Mike meet? And he's like, he was my neighbor. I go, what?
And
Mike
now-
never told me that.
And now his son's training there.
Yes.
That's so awesome. It's
The generations
so awesome.
and also Mike's son is now training, and I'm sure they'll cross train, and it's
And-
like, you know, Steve and Mike used to train together.
It's
Now
so awesome,
their
dude.
boys are training
Dude,
together.
It's the best story in St. Louis.
I have to ask, if you don't mind, because when
Ask whatever
Dakota
you
was
want.
on, he broke. I didn't know that you were his father-in-law, and it's your firstborn daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through that one.
Well, it's like what was the saying you asked me if I ever heard the saying when you first got in here and we weren't on film, and you said, have you ever heard about, you know, the enemy of your enemy is your friend?
Yes.
Well, there's also one to say, you know, keep your friends close to you and keep your
Rather
enemies
even closer.
Well,
Yeah.
so at the time, I was like, I like this because now I can control this more than I could control anything
When was it that you
else.
first realized that they were interested in each other? Did she say something to you?
Actually, it's funny. We're at a Case Championship show, and my wife always took the tickets, and my kids would help. My kids have done everything. I've done everything. I've done the announcing. I've ran the sound. I've ran the lights. I've ran the blah, 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 blah. So I go back, and there's ticket issues or something. So I run back in the tickets, and there's Bobby, and there's this guy hanging out in the back room in the tickets, Dakota. And I knew who he was. I was like, what are you doing hanging out back here? You know,
This isn't where the fun is.
Yeah, it's like, all right, I need to get that ticket. I remember leaving. And then I remember somebody saying something, one of the kids saying something about Dakota being, and I was like, he was in the ticket room at the fights. Nobody hangs out in the ticket room. What's that about? You know? And so then I find out that, yeah, they kind of been talking. Yeah, that was fun. It was, But I like Dakota.
Did you talk to her? Did you like, dude? I'm asking for parental advice now
Oh,
because,
man.
like, I hope I like my daughter's boyfriend.
You're talking to the wrong guy, man. You're talking. I'm like the worst guy to get advice from because I'm in that stage of my life where you're just like, I'm gonna be the guy in the old folks' home. Just
It happens.
there's
it
not
happens.
much you can do, man, and that's why I go back to my life theory now. Is you are where you want to be in life. That's where they want to be. What am I gonna do about it?
Did that-
So, but it was good though because I knew where he was at.
Yeah.
I knew where this guy was at 24 hours a day. Almost. He was with me. We were training, and so
You knew he wasn't doing stupid shit. You knew
right.
He wasn't
Well,
like
he
a bad
was,
guy.
but I knew I could have an influence on it. I knew I could influence.
He was doing my kind of stupid shit.
Yeah, I could have influence on it. But no, it was all right. It was a little adjustment. It's the firstborn. He told you the story about Jake getting him down because I talked
You
to
had
Jake.
a good conversation with him.
Yeah, I said, "Look, Jake," because and Jake was very protective of him, too. So it's like, "Hey, today when he gets in here, I need you to put it to him, hold him down, and I'll take care of the rest." He's like, "All right." So he gets in, Jake puts him on his back and just smashing him, and his face was all grinding down. And I remember getting down on the mat like this, right next to his face. And, "Hey, you do know that's my firstborn, right?" And he knew exactly where this was going. He goes, "Yes, sir." I'm like, all right. So then let Jake let him up, but it was just making a point that it was good.
I mean,
It was funny.
In a lot of ways, man, had you not started the gym, these two would have
No.
never met.
Who knows? I
And
wouldn't
then
have
he
two
wouldn't have been your
grandkids.
son-in-law. And
Yeah, two
do
grandkids.
you ever start to think about the ripple effects that you've
Oh,
yourself?
man,
We're talking
yeah.
about Vaggie, but now
Yeah.
you yourself. You got two grandkids that are a product of this gym
And that's
and your
what's-
promotion, because that's how you met Dakota.
So many little things happen in the sport, and when you think about it, I don't remember who I was talking about, but all the little things that you did, and you wonder, what would it have been? I think about the special needs fight we had, with Garrett Holly.
Oh, that's right, with,
there's so many little things
Fighting
that
for
pops
Autism.
up that I remember going, no, I don't want nothing to do with that. No. And they go, watch the ESPN special. And I watched the ESPN special with Garrett Holly, and I was like, this kid gets it more than most people I have in my gym. Absolutely, I'm in. And I don't know if you ever watched that ESPN special, but you need to if you haven't. You're like,
Blows you away.
I'm like, I'm in. I want this. This kid deserves to get a shot.
Just an
at this thing.
opportunity to compete.
Let him have his opportunity. It was a great fight. Dude, I probably get chills talking about it. And most people tell you that story that were there that night was incredible energy.
I think that was like the only one done, right?
So it was the first ever.
Yeah, where you took.
Missouri was the only one that allowed it, and they couldn't find anybody in Missouri to do it. And I think it was Brian Higginbotham that called me and said,
That's
would
right.
you do it? And I was like, And he goes, watch the ESPN special. And I watched the ESPN specials. I called immediately. Absolutely, I'm in. 100% I'm in. And his dad, Mr. Holly, was amazing.
Do you mind if I add a little context to this?
You got anything
So
going?
Brian Higginbotham was an ambassador for Fighting for Autism.
I don't know if was that in existence at the time.
Fighting for Autism? Yeah, for sure.
Was it? Did he already have that when that
Yeah,
happened?
yeah.
What?
Yeah, because the gentleman that he was in, that he knew.
Oh
that,
yeah,
that was,
yeah. Gotcha.
So yeah,
I didn't know if that
it was a pre-existing organization,
Right.
but this was the first time where like a sanctioned fight between two special needs individuals of the same, weight class and everything, and they did
Right.
have a fight under the sanctioned amateur bout rules, and you were the promotion they did it under. And I remember there was a sense of, is this okay before the fight?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember after the fight had occurred, that everyone was like unanimously like, we're glad we're like, there was like a relief that it happened, and that these, I don't want to say kids because they're not kids, but these guys, the kids at the time, these kids had the opportunity to compete in the sport
Absolutely.
that they truly loved.
And understood it.
Yes.
They understood it. And everybody, like you said before, was probably in the same position I was in. But I watched the
What if
ESPN
something
special.
happens?
But I watched that ESPN special. I'm telling you, you got to watch that if you haven't seen that.
I will now because you
Watch
said that.
it, and I forgot what the name of it is, but I watched that, and I went, Absolutely.
And what was it that sold you? Just the way he talked about MMA?
He understood it. Yeah, he wanted
His
it.
passion?
He worked hard. His passion. His dad was very supportive of him, helping him. At the time, it was a top team, but it was a separate top team, not where it's at now. But, I mean, it was Den Thomas and Amanda Nunes who came with him. So they had Den Thomas, Amanda Nunes, in Sullivan, Missouri for that show before she won her belt. But it was awesome. Yeah, so it was cool.
The soon-to-be greatest woman of all time fighter,
absolutely.
and Dean Thomas, one of the greatest minds in MMA.
And I ran into her in Virginia Beach at Jake's fight, and I came up to her and I was talking to her about the fight. You know, I was like, "Hey, I'm Peggy." She goes, "Oh, from the cage." She goes, and we talked about doing a woman's show. Very receptive of that. Was so cool about that. And we were actually talked about doing a all women's show. And
similar to like Invicta.
Yeah, she's like, "I got all these girls. I'll bring them up anytime." You know, and I was like. And it never followed. I never followed through. I just was not the direction I wanted to go. But at the time, it sounded great, you know. But anyway, yeah. So like I said, there's so many little things that affected because of other people, you know. I think about the Pico fight, you know, with LFA, you know, when
Aaron Pico.
Yeah, when he fought. I don't know if you know that story. But so I really wanted that, you know, when Thiago Moises fought. Zach.
You talking about LFA or Bellator?
LFA.
Aaron Pico fought.
Right, but before.
Oh, he fought one fight in LFA. You're right. And that's what got him signed.
Yeah, he was it. But then.
No.
He fought.
Aaron Pico fought exclusively for Bellator, did he not? His first fight. No, his first fight in Bellator was Zach Freeman. At Madison Square Garden.
Yes. That's the one I'm talking about.
Okay, that wasn't LFA. That was Bellator.
But he fought LFA at, RFA.
Oh,
RFA.
Zach Freeman fought RFA.
Yes, so he fought RFA. So
he fought Thiago Moises at the time.
Yes, great fight.
And broke his hand, I believe, in the first or second round.
Went the distance.
And it still went the distance.
Yeah.
By the way, Thiago Moises in the UFC currently.
Yes, and I've talked to Thiago about that fight since then. And tough fight. But anyway, so then... I got a call from Ed. Says that
Ed Soros, the owner of
RFA
RFA at the time that became LFA.
Yeah, the president of LFA, I think, or CEO. I don't know how all that stat works now. But anyway, so Ed calls me and says, "Hey, Mike Coker from Bellator wants
Aaron Pico
got a fight for Aaron Pico. He's about Zach Freeman. Do you want to release him?" And I'm like, "I want to release him. He's with you guys. I got him with you guys." He said, "Well, I just want to make sure you're good with it. I mean, would he want that fight with Pico?" I said, "Heck yeah." He goes, "Well, I'll hook you with Mike. I'm gonna give you his number. I'm gonna give Mike your number. He's probably gonna call you." Okay. 10 minutes later, Mike Kogan texts me. He's in Budapest or somewhere. "Hey, do you want this fight with Aaron Pico at Madison Square Gardens? This much money." Blah, 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 blah. I said. Absolutely. I'm not even talking.
You haven't even talked to Mike yet?
Nothing.
Did you accept a fight for Zach Freeman without discussing the head coach?
I had nothing to do with it anyway.
I thought you always talked to the coach.
I do. I had nothing to do with anything. They shouldn't have been calling me in the first place. So they did. This is the mistake they made.
Yes.
So
you're right. You're right, mistake.
I was like, Ed, why are you asking me? He's your guy. He signed over with you, bro. He's not my guy. I was just the liaison to move these guys, you know. And so it was funny. So anyway, I said, "Heck yeah." So Mike says, "All right, I'll get with you." And I get back and send the contract and gave him my email and stuff. I called Zach Freeman. At the time, he happened to be in Texas. I was like, "Hey, do you want to fight at Madison?" I don't even know if I got out the name Aaron Pico yet. And he's like, "Hell yeah."
Yeah, dude. Zach's a real one.
And in my mind, I'm like, thank goodness, because I told him you would.
Good.
I think I told him that story later. If not, he knows
I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
So Zach Freeman's biggest win in his career in the grandest stage was because you picked up the phone and was like, "Yeah, he's down."
Well, I don't know. I'm sure they'd have got a hold of him somehow. I was just happy to be the guy in the middle. But
what did you think?
What
did you think that fight came to culmination? Like, first of all,
well, that's funny because this is a true story, and I'm not. You know, everybody's got hindsight's 2020. There was no doubt in my mind that Zach Freeman was going to beat Pico.
Dude, locally,
no doubt. Yeah, everybody. We're like, dude, you picked the wrong guy at the wrong time.
That is the worst pro debut.
Yeah, I was like, Zach, this is a great fight for Zach. I mean, Pico now, you know, 2 years from now might not be a great fight, but right now this is a great fight for you, Zach. And I didn't have to tell him that. He knew that. I mean, like I said, I don't even know if I just asked him, "Hey, you want to fight in Madison?" Yeah. Square Gardens.
By the way, that's no disrespect to Aaron Pico. He's a super athlete. The problem was you're going into professional MMA, Madison Square Garden, and you're also fighting a guy who's been in there with some real ones. And we locally, I remember when Zach got that fight, if you would have looked online, like everyone was talking about like, who is this Zach Freeman guy?
I was
like,
laughing at some of them.
They're setting Aaron up to just have a walkthrough.
Right.
And I remember all the local guys were like, y'all don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And then for Zach Freeman to go out there and finish him in the first round the way he did by dropping him and then submitting him unconscious, then getting on top of the cage and losing his shit, good for Zach Freeman.
Oh,
he deserves everything
Freeman.
he got.
I wish I haven't talked to Zach in a long time.
Neither have I.
Love Zach. We were at a pig roast, me and Dakota, watching that fight because I was like, and here's the thing, you got
that's the manliest thing that's been said this fucking night. We were at a pig roast watching that fight.
It's a true story. One of them underground barriers.
It wasn't the nunchucks. No, it's the pig roast.
Pig roast, man. That's how we do that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. You got a guy that had all these big sponsors. He was coming in. He was had all the accolades.
Dude, he was the Bellator Golden Boy.
I'm like, oh my gosh, people. I loved it though. I was loving it. I didn't say a word. I'm like, you're looking at a guy.
He was there, Bo Nickel.
This gritty, and you got Zach Freeman. He's just gritty. I mean, tough. And I'm like, oh man, are you barking up the wrong tree? You think this is? They thought, and I'm not saying Mike Hogan. I don't know. Mike was wonderful to me. I kept up with him a few years later. Every once in a while, thank him for the opportunity and all this. Like I had anything to do with it. I didn't, but I just happened to be the guy they called. But yeah, I mean, it was like,
no, definitely not the outcome they were looking for.
I've always been a Zach Freeman fan. Always, just I don't know, something about him. Like I said, there's guys that have that. There's just something different. There's something like, man, there's just something different about this guy. There's something, I don't know. I can't explain it. There's not very many guys that did that to me.
A civilized warrior. A civilized warrior.
Yeah.
That's the same feeling I get whenever I talk to guys like Sean Woodson or Dakota or Evan Elder. I'm like, dude, if this was a different time, you could be on horseback pillaging and raping. Instead, you're in the 21st century and you have to at least act like you're civilized. These are real warriors
for sure
in today's day and age. Zach Freeman is amongst them.
Yeah, Zach's a good guy, man. I haven't talked, like I said, I haven't
also, I think what he does for work now.
Oh, he's like,
he's crushing
design thing. Design like, I don't know. It's some type of architectural.
I don't think he lives in St. Louis anymore, though.
No, doesn't he design like something?
Yeah, he's
like
basically an architect.
Oh yeah, I mean he is an architect. He was an architect when he fought. So it's like man.
I actually vibed with him for a little bit when I was still going to UMSL. I remember I had a conversation with Zach Freeman. This was before the Aaron Pico fight, but essentially like I was like asking Zach, like, dude, how do you manage? Because at the time I was going to school full time, getting my undergrad in finance. I was training full time and working full time, and it was kind of like I don't want to say overwhelming me, but I was feeling the pressure. And Zach Freeman, who I had never trained with at the time, but Mike gave me his number. I called him and asked him this. He sat down with me and talked with me for 30 minutes when I was 21-year-old Arion. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that conversation that he took that time for me.
And Zach at the time, he seems like the type that would be a heck of a
Zach
mentor.
at the time was the guy.
Yeah.
I was still like a 5-0 amateur. Like no one knew how I was, you know what I mean? Or at the very least they were just beginning to get, there's an Arion guy that exists. And Zach took 30 minutes out of his time on a random Tuesday morning from his family, whatever, to talk to me, and I'll never forget that.
Yeah,
I got love for Zach.
He'd be a good mentor. I don't know from the mentor side of things, but he'd have been a good mentor. Yeah, that's good stuff. But that LFA. So I look back at that. You want to hear a story? Is I went to Nebraska with Sanchez for a fight, and it's the first time I met Ed. He picks us up at the airport. And I remember going, man, I knew who Ed was. And I'm like, man, dude.
Anderson Silva's manager.
Like, damn, man, he's picking us up at the airport.
You guys must be a big deal.
And then so we're talking, we're all, piling this vehicle going to the hotel or wherever we're going. And they're talking, and I remember Sanchez talking about Jay. Yeah, well, you used to see
Jay
one of
who?
my Jake Collier.
Oh, Jake. Sorry.
You see one of my training partners. It's Jake, So I mean, so then it all ties there, because without that conversation, who knows what would have happened with Jake, And so then you got Sanchez in their ear about,
Just the networking.
Yeah, and that's where it started. So then I, thought these guys were cool. I was LFA fan the minute I walked onto an LFA fight. I was like, there's something different here. I don't know what it is, but I like this. And so then we get in the UFC, and our first fight's in Brazil. So we go to Brazil, and Ed's there, and he introduced me to Anderson, Leota are there. It was real cool. I was like, man, this is awesome, because it's his home area, And so me and Ed go to dinner, and we're talking about areas, and he's like, man, I said, man, I'd love to have LFA or RFA in St. Louis. And he's like, man, I'd love to do RFA in St. Louis. He says, I just need a promoter. And I'm like,
Done.
I'm like, well, I'm a promoter. Why would he? He goes, well, you've never asked me to do a show. I'm like,
You never told me you were interested.
you're freaking Ed Soares. What do you mean? How am I going to ask you? And so that's where it started. And so started in a little place we'd go to dinner at every night in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And then
Isn't that crazy?
and
how
it's
certain
crazy.
things
It's
you
so
just get
crazy.
birthed?
And then I just knew, though. I knew RFA. I'm like their biggest cheerleader, because, man, I've been to all the shows. I've been to Bellator. I got to run the cage door for Strike Force, and I've been to these shows, and it's just like our RFA, LFA is a different animal, man. It's a different animal.
Can I ask you about the pinnacle that is the UFC as compared to like the PFL and Bellator and all these other things?
See, I don't know PFL. That's the only one I haven't been. Yeah, I don't know PFL. I haven't been to a PFL, so I can't say.
It just seems like, to me, we say that the UFC is not a monopoly, and I'm not trying to go down that path with it, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, they are competing, but if you ask any fighter, they're not. The UFC is the goal of all the fighters, and if they go to Bellator or PFL, like, I'm not saying that that's like, somehow lesser than. That's not what I'm trying to say, but like, what I am trying to say is, you've been kind of rubbing shoulders with so many of these people that have your phone number, that you could call if you needed to. When the thing happened with Dakota, got the short notice fight, didn't go his way. Second fight didn't go his way. He got cut. Was there ever a part of you that thought, like, is there something I could do? Is there someone I could call?
Of course. But I know that, for one, I would never. Everything's. I think the most important thing is everything's earned. Everything's earned. There's no call. Now, I'm not saying I haven't called those people for advice. I absolutely have, and I absolutely.
When you say
will.
advice, like what, to get back in?
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
can I get some advice here, man? And they're going to tell you the same thing. They got the same issues. They don't control any of that stuff. But you should always look to people. I mean, to me, Ed Soares is a mentor in that stage from doing shows. I always looked up to him, and so then, because they did a show that I couldn't imagine doing, so absolute mentors to me in that department, and I hope I get to enjoy more of it, now that I'm not coaching or anything. So we spend a lot of time together, It's fun going to their shows, because it's just, I know all the guys, they're amazing at what they do. You go, if you've, I don't know, been to LFA, haven't you? Have you been to
yeah, dude, I go to all. Yeah. I go to the fucking local jiu-jitsu shows.
Yeah,
I love
so
supporting
LFA
the shit now.
is from the sound to the back trailer to the guys running the
professional.
cords to the, they're all. It's so weird because they're all so different people. They're all different people. Where you go to shows and everybody seems like they're robots, and they're all. You go to the UFC, everybody's in tune, and it's like this thing. You go to LFA, it's in tune, but they're different people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what's different about LFA, is like each person is totally different than the other. But man, when it's showtime, it all just.
Yeah, but happens. I would make the sense, or I would make the argument that, like, you were at, I did see you at the last NFA show.
Mm-hmm.
And I would make the argument that like NFA and the way they do the show in terms of production and all of these other things, it's pretty much on par.
It's exactly. That's my, and that's what was great, getting
Like
Mike.
LFA was ahead of the time, like 5 years ago. They were definitively
Oh,
RFA.
absolutely.
LFA was definitively like the feeder league to the UFC.
It still is.
If
Absolutely.
you wanted to be in the UFC, get the LFA belt, you're going to get the call.
I don't know who came up with the future is now. That's the motto for LFA. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Because what you're watching now is the UFC. When you watch LFA, you're watching the next UFC.
Yes, but no.
But the future is now.
No, but yes, but no.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's all Contender Series.
Oh.
And
yeah, what is it? 30-some% of the fighters in the UFC came out of LFA.
Fair.
LFA, 35%. I don't know what it is now. I don't know the numbers, but I know it was 33 to 35. Now you're saying the Contender. Now I'm afraid that's the direction it's going. That's going to kill it.
Did Dakota actually... I thought that was actually a good thing until Dakota was like, Arion. When the first season of Contender Series came out, you would have one guy get a contract, and it used to be, the questions from the reporters used to be like, Dana, why did this guy get a contract? Now, fast forward to the current season, I believe they're on 8 now. It's like, why didn't this guy get a contract,
Right.
Dana? He was exciting. He got a fast finish or whatever. And Dakota was basically saying that, like, when you're just kind of handing out these contracts based on, like, one night, and I think you would agree with this. The hardest thing in sports is consistency. It's easy to be great one night.
Right.
It's easy to have a flash of greatness. It's hard to do that over a period of time, and that's what it used to take to get to the UFC.
Well, that's what LFA was. If
Yes.
you won the belt at LFA,
You were basically gonna
already
get the
went
call.
through it.
Yeah.
You've already went through it.
don't-
We don't need to go through anything because you already went through the gauntlet of LFA.
Fun fact, and people can look this up, more champions in LFA did not defend the belt than did. Meaning if you got the belt in LFA, chances were you didn't even have to defend it
Right.
before you got the call. And if you did defend it, you were definitely going to get the
Right.
call. So yes, you are correct.
So you did because you knew they were tested.
Yes.
The trouble with the Contender Series is not tested. They might be 3-0, 4-0, and they
Yeah.
get Sean Woodson's an anomaly. You know what I mean? He went through it that way, but he proved himself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Most guys don't.
Well, Sean Woodson also had a fucking ringer in the local scene to fight Rashard Lovelace 2 times in a row. And I'm not saying that, like, some of the guys on a Contender Series don't deserve it. Austin
Right.
Bashu
No,
was on the
it's
Contender
just-
Series 14-0 now.
Right.
I fought him. Trust me. He deserves it.
Right.
But what I am saying is, for every
No.
one of them,
Exactly.
there's 3 other guys or 4 other guys that are going to get a contract just based on, like, a night's performance.
Exactly. No,
So-
I agree 100%. I think it's killing. I think it's
diluting
killing it.
the product.
It's diluting the product for sure. But I guess when you're the cream of the crop, it doesn't matter. You're always going to have that. I just worry that they're going to see the value in eliminating all these others by being the LFA. You know what I mean? Or the PFL. And look at that last night's PFL. You know, that Dakota, what's her name? She was a beast. I mean,
Dude, can I
so
be
there's
honest
some
with you?
competition.
It's so hard to keep track of MMA now.
Oh, I can't. I don't act like I just said that because I happen to tune in.
Yeah.
I don't watch all this, so I'm the same way. But
It's hard enough to
Bellator-
know when the UFCs are on now, let alone Bellator and PFL and LFA and the local shows. Like to
I can't keep up.
I'm
with
overwhelmed. I can't.
I can't.
I try and I can't do it. And I'm like an avid fan. Like I want to support these things and I want to see the new guys coming up. There is an immense oversaturation, but I also don't want it to dilute because then less guys will get
Right,
opportunities.
right.
So it's like this weird thing of like,
I know.
you know, you
It's
got
a
Dakota
vicious
Bush
cycle.
and Lucas Clay on the cusp of it. They deserve a shot or they deserve to get back in there. Simultaneously, you got guys in there that I'm not Hunter Campbell. I'm not Sean Shelby. I
Right.
don't know enough. It seems like it's becoming more and more difficult to keep on touch of the sport.
But that's what I'm saying. You look at like an LFA. You look at LFA. You look at Mark Berry that match makes for LFA. I'm saying it. He's the best matchmaker in the business.
Really?
My opinion. Look what the fights he has to put together with the budget that he has. And then you got Sean Shelby and these guys with the endless budget already got everything pre-selected for them. You got a guy in here in the trenches working to get to the next level to build these guys for these guys, and they already get the product handed to them. You got a guy that's out there finding the product. That's what Mark Berry does. Mark Berry's finding the product. He's producing the future. And you watch LFA fights, they're, I mean, quality fights.
LFA
and I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan of LFA. I am a super fan. I've already told you that. There's no
you're
doubt.
biased, but
I'm
you're
telling
not
you
wrong.
why. I'm telling you why I'm that way.
Do you think LFA is kind of like college football, where the UFC is becoming pro football in the sense of like these college kids or LFA fighters are trying to get to that next level, so they're fucking putting it all on the line?
I'm saying they're AAA. I'm saying that they're farm team. I'm saying LFA is the farm team. This is me speaking, because your Brandon Moreno's, all these guys that came from there, Poatan, they all came from there.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the farm team, but everybody, I hear some people worried about going to LFA because competition level. Well, where you want to go?
Yeah.
If you want, I ran my guys through LFA.
Signed.
I ran my guys through LFA because I knew you get through
win
that.
there.
You get through that. You got a chance.
And the other thing to say is like how many guys from the Contender Series have gotten signed and that we don't know them anymore.
Yeah.
Like you get
many.
a Sean O'Malley.
Too many.
But how many of them don't we know?
Too many. Yeah. Because you can't judge it on a night, and that's what LFA does. Now there are times where they come in for one fight, but they've been. If you're in the LFA, you've been built through there. I mean, LFA's tough, man.
Yeah.
You watch LFA fights now, and you're just like, wow.
Well, these
guys are good.
You want to get reality? Ask the fighters.
Yeah.
Like, even the fighters will say like, "Oh, LFA, like, oh shit,
Yeah. And
different caliber.
it is
Tough
And
fights.
If you're
More eyes.
If when I hear people avoiding LFA, that already told me who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I know your projection. You're looking for the easy route, and that's the Contender Series. Let's just say it out loud.
What do you think about like these local promotions that are kind of sprouting out that are basically like feeding their guys, the fighters, and trying to create their own stars? So like, not that they have like sort of quote unquote exclusivity, but you have like Cage Warriors, which would be like Ireland's or the UK's version of LFA, right?
And that's cool though, because it's in its own country.
Yeah,
Where I
okay.
think these ones that are trying to do it in the U.S., more power to them. Go for it. I like the NFAs, and why I like NFA is it reminds me of LFA, but it's NFA for LFA. You know
I know what you mean.
And so but that's me. I'm not saying the others are wrong. I like people that want to help you get to the next level. Those are my kind of people.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah,
without
you know what I'm saying? Where NFA is, like they've said with Dakota, hey, if he gets signed, awesome. Hey, take that fight. It's a good fight. They're not. They want you to the next level. When you get to LFA, they want to get you because that looks good for them. That looks good for you. Everybody's happy. It's a business too. But they want to move you.
Yeah.
They're a trampoline. They're not a platform. They're a trampoline. You
Brad
jump
and
on it
Marlene
to the
are
next.
fans. Brad and
Yes,
Marlene are
and
fans.
they want to move you. I don't care what anybody says. I know them. I've been in the mix with them. They want to get that person to the next level. And by golly, they will be the first one to buy a ticket to whatever that next level is to watch you fight.
You're not wrong.
I guarantee you that. Those are the people you want to surround yourself with.
Okay.
Those are the people that you want to be around. I want to be around people that want to get people to the next level. Period.
God bless.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I'm glad they're here, and I'm glad that, I'm bringing Mike Kendall in and announce, being the ring announcer. In
a lot of ways, it's kind of like a throwback.
It just makes it.
Even NFA was a previous promotion that was
makes
bought.
it a different level. And then, me and Brad talked about this, that when you bring Dakota in on this fight, it's going to change the fabric of MMA in Missouri. And look at it.
You've elevated the game.
Look at what's happened. You got Jake in there at, what's his name? Shamrock. It's changed the dynamic of the game, which is good. We need these guys that want to get fights back to fighting. They can't get fights.
Out of curiosity, and you might not be the right person to ask this to. Maybe I need to get Jake on. But what is Jake's goal now? Is he trying to get back to the UFC?
Yeah,
Is
I
he
think
just
so.
trying to
I have
fight?
no idea. You'd have to ask Jake that. But yeah, last time I talked to him, that's what he said.
He wants to just get some fights to get back in the big show.
I think that's what he wants to do. I don't know.
Humble man.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, good for him, whatever he wants to do. I hope he does. He's lost a bunch of weight. He looks good.
Yeah.
That's all I care about, man. If he's happy, if his family's happy, and he's doing good, that's the most important part of the game. Yeah.
Pat, I gotta say thank you for coming on and making the drive and giving me the time, man. I've now gone 3 for 3 for the guys that I've wanted to talk to that were like the big gym owners, and
Well, I'm a little gym owner, but
maybe in size, but in scope.
yeah. Hey, 10 by 14, we got all kinds of room.
Hey, look what you've produced.
This is bigger than my gym.
Do you? I'm gonna end this with this. When you look back at your time as a coach, what are the emotions that you feel? Pride, joy, empathy? Like what in your body of work, how do you resonate with it?
I think I'm getting the fruits of my labor. I think that now I'm actually really enjoying it because I've stepped away from it to the sense now I'm just kind of flowing and being with the people that are made it. And I'm like, I want to know what's in their mind. You know what I mean? I want to, I get to hang out with some really cool people that are way smarter and done more things than me in this business. And it's like, man, I love it. And what's funny is then it's contagious, and then they'll say things, well, that Patrick, he gets it too, so we're relating. And so right now, being able to be with Dakota and Mike and Grant, me and Grant are like, we get it. We mesh so well together. I like his mentality. I like this mentality of a fighter. You know what I mean? So I get to experience that. That's a blessing, man. I get to be around these people that get it and are just trying to do better and only surround themselves by people that want to do better. That's where it's at. Nothing wrong with starting wherever. I realized I found my niche. You know what I mean? I can't go back and try to start from the ground and build up because they're not going to be as passionate as I am.
God bless. Pat Smith, thank you for the time, man.
You bet. Thank
Seriously.
you, brother. Appreciate it, man. It was a good time.